We are on day two of Summit. Really excited to see you all here. I did want to do a quick recap of yesterday and just go through again some of the logistics for what to expect today. My name is Will Bott. I'm the director of United We Row at US Rowing. I get to work with the community team, Jenny Trays, Jess Jackson, and others. And we put on events like this, like Summit, where we bring together our community to really promote inclusion in rowing. So our goal with the summit is to encourage you all and provide best practices on how we can do this challenging, important work really well and together. So we have an amazing day in store for you all today. I will go ahead. I'm going to share my screen briefly and just dive into the summit logistics real quick. So, um, can you all see my screen? Cool. Okay. So first and foremost, all of these sessions are being recorded. Next week, we will have links on YouTube. So if you miss a session, we will have it on YouTube. That said, we really want you, if possible, to be present for this entire day. We have a 4 hour day in front of us, and if you are able to be here for it, we would really appreciate it. For coaches who are using this for CECs, each full day you attend, you will get those credits. So keep track of that. Yesterday it was a great we the chat was blowing up yesterday and that was really cool. There were conversations happening, there was encouragement happening on the chat. So please use that actively. Have the side conversations during the people who are speak. Like it's totally cool to do that. So please use the chat for your thoughts and questions. Jess Jackson will be monitoring as well, like she did yesterday. Thank you to Jess.
Will, this
Yeah,
is Rick Mack. I'm sorry I wouldn't normally interrupt, and this may be sticking my nose where it doesn't belong, but a little concern for those two people who showed that amazing courage in the first session yesterday to self-reveal, whether they would want that on YouTube. And so that's all I have to say.
yeah. Rick, appreciate that call out. Let me follow up on that. Good call. Good call there. Um, so at the end of each session, there will be a Q&A. The point of this summit is to really have this be as useful to you as possible. And so we want your questions answered. We have some incredible, knowledgeable speakers who are helping us out today. And they're going to speak, but then we want to leverage their expertise to gain as much as we possibly can. So keep track of your questions throughout the session, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. Um, Along the way, just like yesterday, we'll be highlighting some of the resources that we provide. So these are resources as far as funding, coaching development, online learning platforms, and more. So as we go through today, I'll highlight some of the resources that US
Hey,
Road
good morning, Kiku.
provides. Um,
How are you?
Hold on just a
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
second.
Now I gotta,
This is
uh,
perfect timing actually for um this is perfect timing for the announcement of please stay on camera and on mute as much as possible. On camera and on mute as much as possible. If you have questions at the end, we will answer those. But we would love for you to be on camera. Yesterday, the speakers pointed that out, that it's just so much more engaging to talk to real faces and real people versus the names on the screen. So um, lastly, all of the folks who were here yesterday and who are here today, you will be receiving a really special gift that we put together for you and your boat houses. These are like 3 foot posters designed for your boathouse walls. that say a seat in the boat for everyone. And we want to get those up in as many boathouses as we possibly can. And those who have attended both days will be getting that gift in the mail. So, um, any questions on some of the logistical items? All right. Then just a quick overview. We're going to start today with our partners, Hello Insight. We will then move to our keynote, Tom Farrey, and his session, Win at Rowing. Next, we'll have Caragh McMurtry with her session called Next Level Neurodivergence. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back for our fundraising panel, and then finish up today's summit with Parents as Partners, run by the Positive Coaching Alliance. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and introduce our first speaker from Hello Insight. So Hello Insight is an organization that I've gotten the opportunity to work with many times, and they are such a great organization in helping rowing programs capture social emotional learning data and see the real true impact of their programming. So we have Sally. Sorry, hold on just a sec. My screen. Are you guys still seeing my screen?
No,
You're not?
no,
Okay.
just you, Will.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. My screen was still up. Um, so Sally from Hello Insight, she is the COO and she has specialized in program and grant management and capacity building for more than 25 years. In her role as Chief Operating Officer of Hello Insight, Sally manages all of Hello Insight's large-scale partnerships, like our partnership, like the partnership that we have between US Rowing and Hello Insight. Prior to Hello Insight, Sally was the Director of Program and Grants Management and Capacity Building at the TCC Group. So I would love to welcome Sally. Please feel free to take over the floor and welcome.
Thanks so much, Will, and so great to see so many great faces here. I am Sally. I'm one of the co-founders of Hello Insight and very excited to be a Unity partner with US Rowing. So it was great to be in and out of yesterday's session. So many things are so relevant to the work that we also do that can help elevate your work. So in particular, being able to be part of the morning session with Kwabena Nixon about this whole point about you really need to see young people. And by using Hello Insight, you are actually collecting their direct voice. Is each individual, every single young person in your programming having that safe and supportive environment that we know truly to be part of best practices in sports-based youth development? And because of those experiences, are they developing social and emotionally because of your programs? So wonderful kind of segue of really being able to have an opportunity to understand and know your young people vis-a-vis our surveys, and also be able to figure out how to better support them and help them develop. So with that, then, just taking this opportunity to showcase what Hello Insight is, vis-a-vis our Unity partnership with US Rowing, you all have a discount to us. That discount then allows US Rowing to also have access to that data to do that larger kind of advocacy work for you all. So we know that everything's about your frontline staff and your coaches. I myself am a former middle school teacher, so this idea that of what does a frontline staff mean to your program, they mean everything. They are the representation of your work. They are that direct access to your young people. So being able to make sure that they understand and know about best practices in sports-based youth development is really key. And we help measure that. So we have a set of, this is kind of our larger theory of change, that the frontline staff are there at that base. They are your rock, they are your foundation. The more they understand the best practices in sports-based youth development, the more they're able to help young people develop socially and emotionally. And we know that from all the research around SEL, that helps young people thrive in the long term. Getting to know many of the different nonprofit programs that are part of US Rowing, I was able to kind of pop up and look at a variety of ways in which you do your work. So I overlay kind of your version of a logic model on top of ours. So all of your great community youth rowing programs, your coaching training, that welcoming positive club environment, that is what that positive youth development set of experiences are. And we know that you're also, in addition to developing them social and emotionally, you're really also aiming to build team and sports and skill interests. And then lastly, this idea about thriving, what does that really mean? So you have a variety of funders who ask you about college and career readiness, academic success, that social and physical well-being. We know that when you help build a young person's SEL capacities, that there's lots of great citations that basically get you to these long-term outcomes. So whether a young person is in your club for one semester, one summer, know that by using Hello Insight, you'll know that young people are on a stronger pathway because of your work. So we are a dynamic piece of software, but knowing where we all come from in terms of frontline staff, we built it in a way that it is around your frontline staff. So the sets of items and the way that it deploys in terms of the real-time links, whether it's online or on paper, once that data is in our platform, all of the analysis is in real time. The data is useful at the beginning of a program. Your frontline staff get some data-driven recommendations at the beginning, and then about the outcomes at the end. You're also part of a national community. We are representing more than 6,000 programs. It literally grows almost every day. We have a national data set around young people and their and how they grow and develop. We have lots of great community partners in the midst. And again, this idea that it's about CQI, continuous quality improvement, with, of course, that cherry on top about being able to showcase your impact. So quickly, just how it works in terms of leveraging our partnership is the fact that we help you pick the right tool for you based off of age. And all of those surveys are research-based, nationally tested and validated. As soon as you would like to use it for a variety of different types of programs that you run, then great. All of those algorithms reports are literally real time. And our support staff are with you along that whole journey to be able to help you make sure you understand what you're looking at, and more importantly, to act on that data. So as I mentioned, we have that national set of tools. It has across age ranges of 5 to 25. The online portal is really easy to use. You have access to online links and downloadable PDFs. And then the results themselves are instantaneous. It has a national set of algorithms, national norms, gives you one young person's results can be normed across the whole United States set. And we can tell you off of an end of one whether that young person benefited from your program or not. And then more importantly, it really is about that frontline staff. The beginning of the program, they learn about what kinds of experiences. I know you heard from CHJS yesterday, you're hearing from PCA today. We align with their best practices in sports-based youth development. And so how your coaches interact and are trained, then the question is, well, are young people receiving those experiences? And so this part of the survey asks young people, did they experience this best practice? Then that data is then accumulated in order to then present that back to your team. And we have a whole set of resources for you and your team to use that data and to act and learn about how do you do better the next time around. And then it all accumulates into that cherry on top related to a data-driven story. So we were just sending this out. This is what we call our new impact summaries. So for each program that are meeting and beating our national benchmarks, you receive a report like this that tells you, what was your results for this year, as well as some of the benchmark data. I'm assuming that everyone on this call represents a variety of hats, or you yourself play a variety of roles in your organization. So the data is meant, as much as we built it for the frontline staff, it's meant to be useful at all levels. And here we are in this larger community. We were able in 2018, from the 2018 data, we published this report in 2021 in collaboration with Laureate Sport for Good Foundation, where it helped really demonstrate the fact that we were able to measure the data of young people involved in sports and young people not involved in sports. And we were able to prove out that young people involved in sports, which you all well know, actually benefit more. So we're in the process now of working with a variety of the SBYD funders and national partnerships to think about doing this data mining again, as our data set is now 3 times as large. When we did this original data mining, it was off of 3,000 young people matched against our regular out of school time process, out of school time data set. Now it's 3 times larger, and again, and growing every day. So we're really excited to see what we learn more from this. Our learning journey is the fact that we are with you along the whole journey. So it's not just a piece of software. Our team are all youth development involved staff members. And so we're excited to be able to meet you where you're at and help you along the whole journey so that you really benefit from the voices of young people that you're able to capture through the surveys. So with that, I just kind of conclude in terms of there is on the Unity Partnership webpage, our link there, but you can take this QR code here or that a shortened URL and feel free to book with us and you can learn more about who we are. So with that, Will, I think I'm done.
Thank you so much, Sally. Yeah, I have personally benefited and with some of the youth development work that I have done, and just want to thank you. It's so cool on like the individual level to see like a kid go from the beginning to the end, and just like the impact that you can have, and actually like quantify it. And then another thing is you can see sort of where there's room for improvement. So that's been like really cool to see trends across different kids, but then also even different clubs. So yeah, thanks for kicking us off today.
Great.
All right, so we are going to move to our keynote speaker, and to introduce Tom Farrey, I'm going to pass the mic over to Amanda Kraus, our our CEO, to say a few words, and introduce Tom. So, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Will. I'm so big. This screen function is funny. Well, it's so good to see all of you again, and to see so many familiar faces from our rowing community is a lot of fun too. And especially fun to see Tom Farrey in our Zoom here, joining us today. For those of you who don't know, Tom is really well known in our space, and someone who I definitely look up to, in terms of the work that he's done. He's really nationally recognized as someone who's really helped move our sport world forward, in terms of public interest, with really a special focus on young athletes. You've probably read his bio, some of you before this session, but Tom spent, I think it was 2 decades, Tom, I'm getting this right, at ESPN as an investigative reporter. He pioneered cross-platform journalism and earned many honors and awards, probably too many to list. Then he founded the Aspen Institute's Sport and Society program and really shift his focus from exposing in journalism problems within sport to building solutions. What I personally know Tom best for is his creation of Project Play, which is really like a leading initiative in this country, which is focused on improving youth sports, which is a $40 billion ecosystem, which I didn't know until doing my research last night. And we have nearly 30 million children playing youth sports. So it's a huge industry. And it's at the heart of so much of what we do here at US Rowing is thinking about youth and sport. Under Tom's leadership, Project Play has grown into a network of more than 20,000 leaders and organizations across sports and media, healthcare, philanthropy, and government, all with this shared goal to improve access and expand opportunities for young people to play. He's won dozens of national and international awards across journalism and leadership and social impact. He's done a TED Sports Talk. He's spoken at the US Conference of Mayors. I mean, he's big time. So I will stop talking about him and let you all hear from him. And just thank you, Tom, for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your leadership as well. Look, I mean, the US is the world's largest sports marketplace by far. We are also the only nation in the world that does not have a Ministry of Sports or Department of Sports to coordinate sport activity. So that makes the NGBs, the National Governing Bodies of Sports, very important in this space in coordinating the key actors. And I've just been so impressed with your leadership, even before you took the helm at US Rowing and what you've been able to do, and really appreciate all the efforts that your team is putting in place to make rowing more accessible and a more developmentally appropriate experience for kids. So you have a fan in me, and I'm really honored to be here with everyone here today. I will not position myself as an expert at rowing. Yes, I had a Concept 1 rower in my basement for any number of years, and was always wondered why they make this thing so good. It never breaks. How's that company supposed to stay in business if they build such a great product? But I got a lot of exercise, in those cold winters living in Connecticut, rowing in my own kind of way, but can't say I'm an expert whenever a boat is on the water. But I'm really thrilled to be with you all here today. And what I'd like to talk with you about is, let me do a little share screen here. Okay, can you all see that? All right, so then let me do the full thing. There we go. There we go. Everybody see that? We good? Okay, terrific. Yeah. I mean, the title is How to Win at Rowing, right? And it actually builds on the theme of my TED Talk that I gave a month and a half ago, and they're going to release sometime in the coming weeks of the month, which is How to Win at Sports, right? And the idea is, in this country, we think of winning as medals and standing on the top of a podium or otherwise. And I really want to play with that word and really reposition what winning means in this country. And I think what it means is you have the broadest swath of the population engaged in sports and benefiting from sports and having a coherent ecosystem that ultimately and inevitably is going to put people on the top of a podium. So congratulations again for everything you're doing, and congratulations for the great result in Paris. A gold and a bronze, and the women did better as well, and that's fantastic. That's progress. But there's more. There's more. There's building the ecosystem that can make that podium result not just a regular thing, but an inevitable thing. A result of a nation as large as ours, with as much water as ours and as much money as ours, producing the type of results that I think it should. So let me walk you through this here. Let me ground you first of all on what Project Play is. Project Play is all about building healthier children and communities through sports. Okay, health is the goal. Physical health, mental health, social and emotional health, being connected to your communities. That's been since inception of Project Play more than a decade ago. That's our goal. It's getting and keeping and developing as many children as possible through sports, and doing it through, top-down strategies and bottom-up strategies, a lot of convening, the development of insights, ideas, and opportunities to build healthy children and communities through sports. We have been in about 16 communities where we dive deep. We spend a year and a half in those communities, understand them, get surveys into the schools. What are kids playing? What do they want to play? Why are they not playing? Is it homework? Is it transportation? Is it the people playing the sport, or the coaches don't look like you, or it doesn't feel welcoming? What is it exactly? And then we produce this data, and it helps grant makers and policymakers and other actors in the space begin to think about how to build a better sport ecosystem. So a lot of the ideas we have are from the bottom up. We also work, like I said, from the top down. This is our 63 by 30 roundtable. You can see the different brands, Olympic Committee, other folks. It's 20 organizations that we work with pretty closely to think about how to, as best as possible, align efforts. 63 by 30 is, it means 63% youth participation in this country by the year 2030. The data, the data comes from the National Children's Health Survey, where parents are asked, did your kid play sports in the past year or take lessons after school or on weekends? And when they first added this question back in 2016, it was at 58%, fell down to 56% just prior to COVID. COVID hits, falls all the way down to 49%, bumped up a little bit to 51%. That's when we issued the 63 by 30 challenge. That number is actually the target of an interagency group. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is not a Trump thing, not a Biden thing. It's the nation's public health goals by the year 2030. 63%. Government alone is not going to make it happen. It's got to be the private sector. It's got to be NGBs. It's got to be local actors rallying around this. So we're trying to lead the call to action. How collectively can we get 63% of kids playing? It's now bumped up ever since, we launched this roundtable 2-3 years ago. The number is now at 55%. So we're seeing progress. We need to do more to get to 63. We collect a lot of data, right? And we aggregate data, we analyze data. You can see the participation rates there. The states in red have the lowest participation rate and therefore the most opportunity. Those in blue are doing better and sometimes are already at the 63% level. What I want to talk with you about today and get you to really think about, because I think it's really foundational to not only getting to 63%, but actually building a sport ecosystem and maybe a rowing sport ecosystem that is coherent, right? We live in this very diverse society where lots of different types of programs, school programs, private programs, different levels of ages for kids, different type of resources informing those, and it's messy. And so our theory is that if we can all at least agree on a minimum building code for youth sports in this country, and therefore youth rowing in your context, then we can begin to develop a common language. We can begin to develop something of a checklist of sorts to evaluate our programs. And so whether you're going to build some super elite thing or a grassroots program or a summer camp or a school program or otherwise, fine, do what you're going to do, but make sure you check each of the 8 boxes that are in the Children's Bill of Rights in sports. Now, I'm going to run you through each of the 8 of these here, but you should know that these are not words that just come out of nowhere. These are concepts, these are principles that are drawn directly from the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, the 1989 Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is the most ratified treaty in the history of the world. And countries like Norway in particular, but others have as well, have looked at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and used it to build more coherent sport ecosystems. Norway did it back in the 1990s. They realized they just everything was messy, and they started with their version of a Bill of Rights in sports. It became foundational. They got the Olympic Committee, the NGBs, the states. They got all the different key actors in the ecosystem to agree on what the minimum youth sport experience ought to be. And so when I studied Norway and covered the Olympics for NBC Sports back in 2018, then traveled to Norway with the architect of their system, went around the country, learned about it a bit, wrote about it in the New York Times. I'm like, we got to do that here. And we don't have a Ministry of Sports, like I was saying earlier. We don't have anybody who's going to. So forget, we're going to do it. So we put together a policy group and a set of actors, a blue ribbon committee who know law and human rights and et cetera, and disability law. And we came up with what I'm going to run through with you here. And we have an enormous amount of momentum. I'll get into that a little bit more behind it, but I want you to think about this. And again, I am not the expert in rowing. I do not know everything you are doing. I suspect you're checking a lot of these boxes already, and I suspect you could probably check more. But I'm hoping that as we roll through it, you're being reflective about what your programs are offering and how well you are honoring the human rights of children, those that, like, if you were simply born, you deserve. These are not nice to haves. They're should haves if you're engaging children. And these are the 8. And I'll go deep on each one of those there. But it's to play sports, safe and healthy environments, qualified program leaders, developmentally appropriate play, to share in the planning and delivery of activities, to an equal opportunity for personal growth, to be treated with dignity, and to enjoy themselves, because actually joy matters. Number one, and it's core to what this whole conference is about, is that all children have a human right to play sports. And they have the right to have organizations make every effort to accommodate their interest to participate and to play with peers from diverse backgrounds. Providers should develop policies, practices, and partnerships, reaching out to youth from underrepresented populations, and create programs that meet and stimulate youth interest in sports. Nonprofits and other groups that benefit from the use of public facilities have a special duty to protect the rights of all children to participate. We tend to think of youth sports in this country as being privatized, and government doesn't really play a role in any of it. That's not true. Government invests actually pays for most of the spaces where soccer and basketball, whether it be schools or municipal fields or otherwise, where it's delivered. And so we believe that based upon that public investment, there ought to be some guidelines around access and safety and other matters. Number 2, all children have the right to safe and healthy environments. They have the right to play in settings free from all forms of abuse: physical, emotional, sexual, hazing, violence, and neglect. Right. While the physical nature of sports means all risk cannot be eliminated, programs should take precautions to protect youth from harm and dangerous situations. And at all times, the best interest of the child should prevail. Number 3, all children have the right to qualified program leaders. They have the right to play under the care of coaches and other adults who pass background checks. Now, the nice thing about being part of the Olympic movement is there is a level of accountability to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, which I know it's been an imperfect organization in the past and started in 2017. There's definitely some things to work through, but what's nice about it is anybody who is in that movement, you're going to get background checks and you're going to get abuse training. We need to move to a model where everybody has to do that. These are policy considerations, but background checks matter. Coaches should also receive training and, at a minimum, general concepts in coaching youth, sports-specific coaching, the emotional needs of children, injury prevention, CPR and first aid, and abuse prevention. Children and parents and caregivers deserve to know program policies and procedures in these areas. They need to be on the website. They need to be distributed before the season, etc. And there needs to be ideally some level of accountability to them. 4th, that all children have the right to developmentally appropriate play. Children have the right to play at a level commensurate with their physical, mental, and emotional maturity and their emerging athletic ability. Roster sizes, rules, and equipment should be adapted to those levels. They should not be subject to inappropriate pressure or exploitation. Reasonable efforts should be made to recruit and accommodate youth with disabilities. And all children should be treated as young people first and athletes second. Now, this is an interesting conversation. I know within rowing, the question about 15 and under, and is that the right thing to kind of pull back on that because it's just not age appropriate. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that. I'm not in the world of rowing, but I'm glad you're having that conversation. That's the type of thing that needs to happen. Developmentally appropriate play is so important and is so widely ignored in this country. I mean, in my book from 2008, I'm covering, the AAU second grade national championships in basketball and kids chucking balls at, 10-foot hoops from their hips. And it's like, The parents are going crazy because the kids are still connected to an umbilical cord. I mean, it's like, no, that's not age appropriate. Tennis has figured out they've gone to, different types of balls and a smaller court and so forth. So how do you make rowing as developmentally appropriate as possible to kids? How much creativity can you bring, to different types of formats for kids to engage in? Fifth, that all children have the right to share in the planning and delivery of activities. This is really about voice, just having some say in the creation and delivery of these programs, right? This doesn't happen typically in sports. We call it youth sports, but it's really designed by adults for adults. And we rarely put kids on our board. We rarely gather data to understand what kind of experience they want. We're trying to help. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to present you with an option completely free that will help you develop rowing and your particular organization, if you'd like it, data that you can use to create the feedback loops that'll make the delivery of your programs more youth-centered. Sixth is an equal opportunity for personal growth. The children have the right to have programs invest equally in them, free of discrimination based on any personal or family characteristics. Policies on minimum playing time in games should be established in recognition of the evolving capacities of youth, with a bias, especially at the younger ages, toward roughly equal playing time over the course of the season. I suspect in rowing, this is maybe less of a challenge. Programs should create balanced teams where possible and be judicious in creating competition formats that favor early bloomers to the exclusion of others. Seventh is to be treated with dignity. The right to participate in environments that promote the values of sportsmanship, of respect for opponents, officials, and the game. I know this is one of the real strengths of rowing. They have the right to make mistakes and fail without fear. Policy should be established and enforced to prevent bullying behavior by coaches, parents, spectators, and teammates. Education on these matters should be provided to them in a variety of formats and languages. And the last one really is just to have fun, which seems like a nice to have, but it's actually the reason we actually do sports. I mean, it's so easy to slip into a training mentality, but joy is what matters. In fact, I mean, Norway's system, which I have studied quite a bit, and along with about a dozen other world systems. I mean, at the core is the motto they rally everyone around is the joy of sports for all. The idea that if you fall in love with an activity, then you're just going to want to continue to do it and be the best possible athlete you possibly can. So how do we inculcate this love of rowing, in kids and not turn it into just a training and a numbers game? I mean, how can we inject as much fun as possible in the course of the activity and recognize how kids look at fun and look at accomplishment? So find conditions of comfort and happiness, and can facilitate this love of sport, learning, self-mastery, and sustained engagement. I'm thinking about we raised our kids in Connecticut, and while I was in the basement on my Concept One rower, our neighbors, we were very close with them, and there was the eldest son in that family was a kid named Brett Cataldo, and Brett Cataldo loved sports, and he wanted to stay in love with sports, but he was so small that he couldn't make these travel teams in baseball and other sports that he was playing. And this is a wonderful story, and it speaks to the value of rowing. So he ends up going to a prep school, and then at that prep school, he discovers rowing. And because he's a small guy, he ends up being the cox on the boat there. And then he ends up going to Berkeley and being a very good cox at Berkeley, right? And so the incredible irony about this, out of Burlington, Connecticut, the best D1 athlete that emerged was the kid who got cut from everything at an early age, but rowing made a place for him, right? I think it's a wonderful story, and he had so much fun doing it. He learned so much about himself. It's a story that makes me smile, and I just wanted to share that with you. The Bill of Rights in sports the good news about these aren't just words. We weren't sure anybody was going to endorse it when we pushed them out the door because it had the word rights in there. It was the early days of the trans athlete conversation. We thought the lawyers are going to be like, yeah, we don't want to go there, but they went there. U.S. Olympic Committee signed on. Disney, ESPN ran it to the top of Disney. They signed on, and now most NGBs have endorsed it. We have like an array of grassroots organizations, foundations, athletes, literally. This is just a partial list of the groups that have signed on to it. We're also now getting real buy-in from cities themselves. So the National League of Cities, there's a couple thousand cities around the country, has endorsed it. The U.S. Conference of Mayors in June, with an official resolution, adopted it and encouraged mayors across the country to do the same. And the National Recreation and Park Association, which for the park and rec officials who work with the mayors, are on board as well. They sit on our 63 by 30 table. So we think there's a real opportunity to take the Bill of Rights to city by city basis and say to mayors and park and rec folks, hey, what can you do? What would you like to endorse? And let's come up with like 3 to 5 things you might do to align. Yeah, I mean, we've already got dozens of cities that have already signed on, World Cup host committees, etc. So how can you activate? So these resources live on our website. Would encourage you, there's like a self-reflection template on there, like here are the 8 rights and here's what we're doing to align. I'd encourage you to do that. Go through that process. Maybe just keep it to yourself. Maybe share it with your board. Maybe share it with all of your members. Maybe put it on your website. Here's how we align with the Bill of Rights in sports. Maybe think of another 3 or 4 or 5 ways to align even further. Use it as a resource. It's all free. There's nothing I'm selling you here at all. Share the Bill of Rights with other folks in your community. So it's not just rowing that's aligning with these principles. I also want to kind of share with you a real opportunity here, and you're going to want to get your camera out because I got a QR code that you're going to want to use here. We have something in the field right now called the National Youth Sports Survey. We pay for it. We work with Utah State to create an IRB approved survey. It will be nationally representative with a Qualtrics panel, but we're also making this available to any organization out there through the end of the month for free. And what it is an ability for you to gather data from your kids in your programs about what they want out of what they want out of the experience. It's open for all kids 10 to 17. We want to understand youth people, relationships and experience with organized sport. Again, it closes, so we're a little bit tight here, but you got a few days. You got 10 days, and it's available in English and Spanish. And you can capture your own data. You would have your own dashboard showing this stuff. So it doesn't just all flow to Aspen. You will see what's happening within your own organization. There's a free, secure portal to easily distribute the survey and view organizations and aggregated results in real time. Registration, 2 minutes, etc. There's the link at the bottom there, and then here is your QR code if you want to learn more about this and begin to gather your own data. So I'll hold it there for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Other ways you can plug into this, we have the Project Play Summit coming to Boston. They have a little bit of rowing in Boston, I hear, and so we're thrilled to bring it there. It'll be at the Park Plaza, and Fenway Park will be the reception. Early bird registration is open now. If you want to learn more about the Bill of Rights, there is the URL down there on the bottom, and I'll leave it there. So, is that good, Will?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Let's open it up for questions. Are there any questions for Tom?
And you're going to read the questions, Will, or am I supposed to look in the chat or something?
No, no. Feel free. You can actually come off of mute if you have a question for Tom and the group. Tom, I guess I have a question. So you know, I thought it was really interesting that you talked about like the human rights of a child and how much kind of how many different voices and people are kind of were brought to the table to sort of define these rights. Um, I think that there may be some people who are seeing some of these and they think, okay, we do this better than others. For organizations who are interested in signing this and kind of like taking this next step, um, do they have to have all of this like figured out? Like what are is there like a checklist? Is there sort of pass fail? Like, can you just talk a little bit about like the actual like application of like how an organization could a rowing club do this too?
Yeah, anybody can do it. Yeah, it's actually very simple. It means you simply write me an email. I'm trying to find it's actually Marty Fox on my team at martin.fox at Aspen. I could put it in the chat at aspeninstitute.org. Marty on our team processes these. It just means like say we would like to endorse the Bill of Rights in sports. Here's our logo, and then we'll add your logo on the website. Beyond that, we just encourage you to go through this self-reflection exercise, which I am going to put into the chat here. It's called an editable template. And that will be useful to you guys to understand, how well you're aligning or not aligning and what more you can do. I just put it into the chat right now. And yeah, and then do something on social media. Say we endorse the Bill of Rights in sports. Could be as simple as that, or we endorse the Bill of Rights in sports, and here's how we align. You can share your PDF with your members. You could then also put it on your website if you like. You could send around and
Yep.
there's lots of things you could do with that self-reflection exercise. But for us, it's just we endorse. We're trying to get people familiar with it. It's not a high bar right now. There's not an accountability. We're not going to follow up a year later and say, okay, did you live up to this, this, and this? We don't have the capacity to do that right now. We are going to do more going forward. We're developing a whole 3-year plan that runs through the Olympics in 2028. And so we may move that more toward that. But for now, if you're interested, just
Cool.
write Martin Fox.
Yeah, awesome. And I see it says here's how we honor this right, and it's for all 8 of these rights. And so you kind of define how you as a rowing club or an organization honor each of those 8 rights. Cool.
Tom,
Uh,
you may be well down the road on getting NGBs on board with this. I don't know, it's not on my radar, but please know that ACES is here to help. And I'd love to touch bases with you. We have 75 members, 20 some are outside of the USOPC family. I would love to put out a communique about supporting the Bill of Rights, and however else we can help, let me know.
I appreciate that, Rick. Yeah, well, let's you and me and Marty follow up on that.
Okay.
Cool. Nick.
Yes, hi Tom. I appreciate everything you're doing about youth sports. I'm curious if you are engaging with parent organizations as well, because not necessarily so much in rowing, honestly, but in other sports where my kids participated, the coaches had a lot of problems with the parents, and the whole the right to enjoy seems really important. And sometimes I think parents don't necessarily engage with that very well. So are you working with parent organizations?
Yeah, I would love your thought, Nick, if which organizations you think would be most effective. Parents are hard. So where do parents aggregate? What are their organizations? Is that like the Parent Teacher Association? Is it like they're all these bloggers for parents? I mean, it's a hard one. I mean, how do they? Do you have any ideas, or does anyone have?
I was thinking PTA,
Right.
because that might be where it starts. Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, a lot of the participants in rowing are also parents, so you're talking to a bunch of parents right now, but you're probably preaching to the converted.
So,
Yeah.
Tom, if I could interrupt, I have an example
Yeah.
for what Nick's talking about. So, at the rowing club that I'm associated with, and there's several others in my region that do a similar thing, there's a parent group that is obviously the parent of the kids who are rowing, and the parent group has its own 501(c) organization, and they do fundraising and they own assets and they represent the parents over the long term. So, new parents will roll in and old parents will roll out, but the entity will persist. And so, that'd probably be a pretty good target group. My club recently has had a really difficult time with one parent in particular who's been just unbelievably awful, and there's no mechanism for us to deal with it appropriately. It falls outside of the guidelines of safe sport.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, safe sport. In my view, safe sport needs to expand its idea of what it's trying to do to encompass more of that kind of behavior.
Tom, we have a question in the chat from Jill. Do you support adaptive sports?
100%. Yeah, I mean, the idea of our Project Play is, you can tell over my shoulder here, it's sport for all and play for life, right? And so that means all kids, all backgrounds, all zip codes, all abilities. Adaptive sports are, a very important piece of that. Last week, we hosted a roundtable at the Rose Bowl Institute, and Ezra Fretch, who is a two-time Paralympian gold medalist, 20 years old. This kid's so impressive. If you want like an incredible advocate for adaptive sports, get this kid on your radar. He was arguably the most compelling speaker of the 20 we had at the round table. We're always thinking about how to include kids with disabilities into this conversation, as well as just kids who are like late bloomers, late starters, below average athletes. It all matters. We're not going to be the experts in adaptive. There are organizations that are much more well positioned than us to provide that kind of expertise, but we do try to provide a seat at the table when we're fostering conversation around these topics and developing solutions.
Well, yeah, thank you, Tom. Tom Rooks, question.
Hey, Tom. Just a question for you. I love the Bill of Rights, and my work at US Rowing very much involves development of the sport and the domestic side. The question I have is, I see a lot of the reality of youth organizations being centered on the business or the performance or the scholarship outcomes, right? Like, did my dues go up? Did we win more stuff, or did more kids go to college on scholarship? I really firmly believe in your Bill of Rights. Does Aspen Institute have any tools? Okay, so there's a movement to support the Bill of Rights and get more of a national view on that, understanding how important it is. But tools for clubs, because I deal with a lot of youth rowing programs where the coaches are stuck in the spot of, yeah, I do love this. I see the bigger benefit, but at the end of the day, we don't win. Somebody doesn't go to college. We don't get faster, or the dues go up. It doesn't. So do you guys have tools or things for people to start instituting the Bill of Rights at a local or club or regional level while we wait for a more national movement or interest?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, parents are so organized around the scholarship or the preferential admission to a selective university that becomes a lot of the incentive. I mean, we don't have specific tools other than what you saw with the Bill of Rights. I do think they're universal. I do think it is, the document itself is, you can foster conversation around that. I would encourage you to take the Bill of Rights and, talk about what you as an organization are doing right now and what you maybe want to do going forward, and then pull the parents together and then just familiarize them with the concepts. You're not going to find a whole lot of disagreement on that. But in the course of that conversation, maybe you can kind of recenter the value proposition for sports. Because at the end of the day, I think what most parents want is they want their kids to be physically active. Um, uh, they know sport can be protective against mental health challenges. They know it can connect them to other kids. I mean, just the whole idea of rowing, of like moving with other kids and in tandem. I mean, it's a very connected kind of thing that pushes back against the social isolation that we see with a lot of kids these days. I mean, the scholarship and the Olympic dream and so forth are really very much secondary. And if you can get parents to really think about what they really want their kid to get out of the sport, then maybe you can help reset the culture, focus the culture.
Cool. All right, Tom, we are coming up on time, but we actually have a pretty exciting announcement to make. Jenny, I will turn this over to you for our announcement. And Tom, thank you so
Yeah,
much
well,
again.
first I want to thank Tom. I have so much respect for what you do, so thanks so much for being here and for all that you do. And I loved hearing that story about the coxswain, your old neighbor. I'm sure it's not as common as you think that we get a lot of athletes who have tried other sports, and I'm so glad he felt embraced by rowing. That's really nice to hear. So we're excited to announce that US Rowing is officially an endorser of the Bill of Rights. So really excited to officially share that today. I did check the website. You can see our logo up there. So the team is really excited to roll this out across the organization in 2026. And we really look forward to working with our member organizations, everyone on this call who's excited about it. We are already having conversations with parents, and Kevin, we definitely want to follow up with you on your point today. So really excited to be a part of that and that incredible group up there. And I would encourage everyone on this call to think about how you can do it at your local organization. And just plug the Project Play Summit as well. It'd be fun to have a good rowing turnout up there and maybe doing something rowing specific kind of along at the event would be cool. So exciting news, and thanks Tom for being here today.
Well, thank you, Jenny and Amanda and the whole team. Well, everyone for your leadership. It's exciting. It's really exciting, and rowing is just such an amazing sport, and we're thrilled to be able to work with you in operationalizing it. So just let us know how we can help.
Amazing. We will. Careful what you wish
Awesome.
for. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, Jenny. All right. Well, we are going to move on to our next session, which is called Next Level Neurodivergence. So we are going to be joined by Caragh McMurtry. Caragh is an Olympian, an advocate, and the founder of Neurodiverse Sport. Her story and leadership have helped teams around the world create environments where all athletes can thrive. Her session, Next Level Neurodivergence, will help us move from awareness to action, building teams that celebrate difference and unlock potential. Caragh, thank you so much for joining us. Please take it away. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. How do I share my screen?
Green
Or can
button. I think so.
If not, I can just talk.
No. I think so. Green button at the bottom. Do you see share?
Oh yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
So you can just see the PowerPoint now.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I should probably start a timer as well because it's not a massively long slot. And I'm renowned for over talking. So
Yeah, we've got 45 minutes with some Q&A at the end. So
oh, we've got 45 minutes of Q&A.
with including Q&A. So
Yeah, okay, fine. I mean, that is longer than I thought we had, so
cool.
perfect. So yeah, thank you for having me. As Will said, this session we'll be talking about neurodiversity and really reframing how we think about it in a sporting context. My name is Caragh McMurtry. I was on the Great Britain rowing team for 10 plus years. I raced at multiple world championships. I raced at the Tokyo Olympics. I have, in my life, been diagnosed with a lot of different mental health conditions. None of the treatments I received for those really helped. And it wasn't until I received a diagnosis of autism and really got to understand what that meant for me and how I needed to advocate for myself and shape the environment around me, that things really changed and my mental health actually massively improved. And so did my performance as well. So a little bit about neurodiverse sport. I co-founded Neurodiverse Sport with my husband, who is also neurodivergent. So as a kid, he was diagnosed as dyspraxic, also dyslexic, and he has ADHD too, but he has been an elite cyclist for the last 10 years. And before that, he was a high performance, let's say, lightweight rower. So I think the highest level he got to was winning a medal at the European Championships, so pretty good. And yeah, we set up Neurodiverse Sport because of our personal experiences of sport. So the amazingly transformative nature of sport, particularly if you are neurodivergent and you don't think, learn, and behave the same way as everyone else. We'll talk a little bit more later on about what sport can bring you in particular. But also there were elements of sport that we found particularly difficult. So neurodiverse sport is driven by lived experience. Everyone on the team is themselves neurodivergent, so they might be autistic, have ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, or have a family member who is or has one of those conditions. We work with practitioners, we work closely with researchers. We have many collaborations throughout the sector. We've just started a Sport England funded project. So obviously you guys are in the USA, you might not know what that is, but Sport England is like the government organisation that runs publicly funded sport in the UK. So we are collaborating to really understand how we can embed neuro-inclusive practice into national governing bodies. So those are the national governing bodies that govern sports. The first sports that we'll be working with are Swim England and British Mountaineering and Climbing. And yeah, we really try to bring the stories to life, bring the kind of learning and awareness that we raise to life through real human stories. Since I've moved to working more at the systemic level, I haven't probably told my story as much in the last couple of years. So this will be, I don't know, maybe like ripping off a plaster, talking about myself later in today's session. But it's always good to kind of challenge yourself, isn't it? So in terms of neurodiversity and exactly what I'm talking about, when I talk about neurodiversity, neurodivergence, neurotypical, essentially what we're talking about is just recognizing the basic fact of human biology that all brains are different, and they always have been. So just like we accept variation in height, in strength, in physiology in sport, we also have variation in how people think, learn, communicate, feel, process the world around them. So when we say neurodiversity, we're not necessarily talking about diagnoses, even though I've mentioned different diagnoses so far because that's what people are familiar with. we're talking about the full range of human cognitive wiring across every team and environment. So some people will be neurotypical if you imagine it as a kind of bell-shaped curve and the normal distribution of, cognitive profiles across the population. Some people will fit into that kind of more common profile, and others will fit into the kind of less common profile, and that's why they have you've got the phrase of, if you've met one person who is autistic, you've met one person who is autistic, because it's about kind of being on that outside, that less common profile. And yes, you can kind of group people together into having generally kind of shared traits, but essentially their neurodivergence will manifest very differently. And to be honest, everyone who sits in the middle under that kind of neurotypical kind of flag also is going to present really, really differently as well. We are all very different in our neurological makeup. So why is this important to talk about in sport? And what's the key kind of concept for coaches and also athletes and peers to take away? That is that traits are often more important than labels. So as I mentioned, like I have spoken about autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia so far, because those are kind of like the labels that we're familiar with. And diagnoses can be useful, but what really matters, on the river, on the lake, or on the gym floor, are the traits that you can see, how an athlete thinks, processes information, and responds to their environment. And that's the neurodiversity paradigm. So we're talking about differences and we're trying to reframe it as differences and not deficits. Neurodiversity, it doesn't say that everyone is the same and that we should treat everyone the same. It's quite the opposite. It says that those differences actually really do matter. They show up in performance and they deserve to be understood, not corrected or masked. I'm just going to pause to check that anybody has any questions so far. I actually can't see everyone, so I'm just guessing that's a no.
No questions that I see so far.
Awesome. So I think, how do I frame this? I think one of the biggest things that I wish coaches had understood about me and the kind of different behaviors that I presented was, although when you're really busy, or maybe you don't understand someone, you don't have the time or capacity, or difference can be really affronting or confronting sometimes. It's really easy to judge someone's behavior if it's different, but I think the best way forwards is to understand that all behavior is communication. And that's a really important mindset shift. So in sport in particular, behavior isn't random. Often people are not trying to be rude or difficult or dramatic. They're just communicating. And we can kind of see it as, I know like rowers and rowing coaches, like they love the data. Communication is data. It tells us whether there is a fit or a mismatch between a person's cognitive profile and the environment that we've created for them. So, as mentioned, we all have a unique pattern of cognitive traits like focus style, sensory sensitivity, processing pace, need for structure or creativity under pressure. And when the environment complements those traits, athletes might feel settled and confident and regulated, and their performance will follow. When the environment clashes, it's really easy to see it as that person is misbehaving or there's a lack of resilience. Whereas actually what's happening is they are more often than not communicating their distress, their overload, their confusion, or their sense of threat. So that might look like withdrawing or shutting down or frustration, or emotional reactions or inconsistency in performance. But actually, like I said, it's a form of communication. They're communicating a mismatch. So I guess our question as a coach or a peer or a supporter is, what is this behavior telling me about the environment or the demand right now? So the environment could be physical, it could be lighting, noise, it could be sensory. So probably not as much of an issue in rowing, but crowds, whistles, lights. It could be social, so communication style, expectations, emotional tone, psychological safety, or structural, like clarity, routine, transitions. When we tune into that, we are much more kind of capable of moving from blame or misunderstanding to, I guess, partnership and performance. So I mentioned earlier, like the transformative power of sport. Um, I know for me, sport was very much a lifeline. It provided me with regulation. I mean, it probably doesn't seem like it, but I really struggle with emotional regulation. My whole life is me tiptoeing around things to make sure that I give myself the best chance of being emotionally regulated, because being emotionally dysregulated is not an enjoyable experience. Um, it provided structure, especially in a kind of social setting. Um, it provided a kind of purpose for socializing, um, because I guess like the kind of small talk aspect of socializing has always been difficult for me, but like every human being, I and other neurodivergent people have a kind of social drive. It can provide people with a sense of identity, freedom, focus, connection. It can be absolutely life-changing. There are statistics in the UK to say that up to 90% of the prison population have significant traits of either ADHD or autism. And we also know about the transformative power of sport. So I think in the next 5 or 10 years, we're really going to see how a better focus on neurodiversity, the different ways in which people think, behave, perceive the world around them. If we really start to open up and understand that, we can really start to, I guess, break down some of these barriers that people are consistently running up against and actually using sport to genuinely change lives. When we're talking about neurodivergence as well, we often look at these neurodivergent conditions. I said I don't like to take a labels-based approach, but it's what everyone's familiar with. So autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, they're all diagnosed through a deficits-based lens, but actually they often come with significant strengths. So we often see that it's a weird pattern. I'm waiting for someone to do research in it, but most of the physiotherapists I've met are dyslexic, like a really good percentage of them. And whether it's kind of, that it's chicken or egg, whether it's that there is an innate connection between being dyslexic, being more of a 3D thinker, being more of a social person, or whether it's, difficulties in school means that you have to utilize your social strengths more. I don't know, but there's a definite connection. There's a connection between ADHD and creativity. There's a connection between autism and that kind of those problem solving, systematic thinking. There are strengths in each of these conditions. When we stop kind of, judging behavior and we start recognizing these traits, we can start to unlock these strengths and the potential that often goes unseen. So like I said, neurodivergent people often have extraordinary pattern recognition and tactile insight. I'm gonna blow my own trumpet here, but like I'm actually a facial recognizer. So fun story was that I went go-karting once in a whole other city, and about 2 months later, in the village that I was living in at the time, walked past someone who was getting into a car, and I said to my husband, "Oh, there's that guy from go-karting." And he was like, how did you even how did you remember that? How did you recognize that? That's weird." So I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I'll take a super recognizer test." And yeah, so like it shows you like loads of distorted faces and flashes images up and like different things like that, manipulates the images. And like I scored really highly because one of my autistic strengths is that I can really easily recognize patterns, particularly in faces. Other neurodivergent strengths might be that hyper focus and sustained efforts on meaningful tasks, creativity and unconventional problem solving under pressure, attention to detail, refinement of technical skills, deep passion, commitment, loyalty to the team. If you've ever had an athlete who sees a task differently or who spots patterns or inconsistencies even that others don't, an athlete who trains obsessively, like I can think of a rower who is not, I say, out as autistic, a gold medalist. She is renowned for her absolutely obsessive training, and I'm sure that is down to her kind of autistic tendencies. You know, those athletes who bring relentless energy and passion, there's a good chance that you've coached someone who is neurodivergent. If we consider that at least 1 in 7 of the population is neurodivergent, then 1 in 7 of the people that you're coaching will be. And like I said, these strengths often get missed because the environment isn't set up to support kind of difference, which makes sense because especially when we are creating systems and environments for larger populations, we create them around the majority neurotype. That absolutely makes sense. But the issue is where we start to become really, really rigid, and those people who don't quite fit in the system, they either have to, stretch really hard to fit in or they're excluded essentially. So I just wanted to briefly talk about intersectionality as well and how that relates to neurodiversity. And I'm sure that it's also very much related to the wider context of your conference over the last 2 days. And it's a really important layer. So intersectionality refers to the kind of multiple layers of barriers that people might face. It can also reflect privilege as well, but in the position that I'm talking about barriers. Neurodivergence never exists in isolation. So it intersects with gender, with culture, with socioeconomic background, language, mental health, trauma history, identity, lived experience. Lots of things come into the mix to impact how a person thinks, behaves, perceives the world. It also comes across and is judged. So, for example, and I alluded to this earlier, but two athletes with ADHD could present completely differently if one is a really extroverted male footballer, let's say, and the other is a late diagnosed autistic woman in rowing. And therefore, that kind of one size fits all approach to inclusion or neuroinclusion, it doesn't capture this complexity. So I guess my first kind of takeaway action is that any support that is given, it has to be flexible, it has to be curious, it has to be individualized. So this is slide 8, yeah. So hopefully, like, having spoken through what I've just spoken through, this slide makes sense to a degree, but I will talk through it. So neurodivergence is not, or neuroinclusion, sorry, it's not about lowering expectations. It's about understanding people so that they can exceed expectations, so that they can exceed their own expectations, whatever their capacity is, so that they can reach their full capacity. And as I said, when we shift from fixing behavior to reading behavior and reducing mismatch and designing environments that fit different brains, we can unlock performance in everyone. That's not just neurodivergent athletes. Neuro-inclusive practice tends to benefit everyone. So this diagram just shows that, I guess it's a good image to have in our heads when we're thinking about, okay, how do we deal with someone who is presenting really differently, who you're just really unfamiliar with the way that they just are, the way that they work, the way that they think. What we can do is we can see it as like an iceberg. So we see that behavior, we understand that there is an experience that sits below that, and perhaps we try to have an open conversation with them about that. We also understand that essentially the root cause is not necessarily some sort of moral failure. It's actually that they have a different wiring of their brain than you, for example, than the person next to them. And it's that brain wiring that is interacting with the environment to cause a kind of match or a mismatch. So if the behavior that we're seeing is not positive, then it's probably hinting that there is a mismatch between that person's natural wiring and the environment that they're in. So for example, it's a really typical example that everyone will relate to, but a child with ADHD, a common symptom of ADHD is that hyperactivity, especially in children. And if you ask a child with ADHD to sit in a classroom for 6, 7, 8 hours in a day, to sit still, do what they're told, just listen to the teacher, of course that's going to be really, really hard. And that's a mismatch between their kind of natural wiring and their traits and the environment that they're being asked to put. That's not necessarily a deficit within them, although that's the way it's kind of typically been seen. So I think it's a really, really empowering way to look at people, to look at behavior, to look at potential. So when we kind of align a person's wiring with the environment around them, we're finally in a fair position to make judgments about behavior, competence, talent. Because I think something that is key, and I think I've kind of woven it in this whole time, is like I said, inclusion is not about being, nicey-nicey. It's not about lowering standards necessarily. If the standards are there, if we've got behavioral standards for a reason, it's important that everyone follows them, but it's important that everyone is enabled to follow them first. So, neurodivergence, it's not an excuse for poor behavior. It's often a reason for dysregulation or unexpected responses. And our kind of role as coaches, as peers, as supporters is to understand this, and to put the right support in place and to give people a real chance to meet, clearly defined behavioral standards, which hopefully should themselves reflect neurodiversity, to meet performance expectations, before we draw conclusions or act on them. And even if it's sport for recreation, to meet those kind of social standards that people expect, we need to kind of meet people where they're at, understand them, understand their underlying traits and how they interact with the environment, and to give them the best chance of being the best version of themselves and the best teammate. To put that into kind of more of an understandable example, I know that for me, I have quite strong sensory sensitivities. So like if you put me under a fluorescent light and you ask me to present like a presentation, I will actually, it's really weird. It does something to my brain, but like it feels like it fragments my brain, and I slowly start to lose the ability to speak, and my speech will become slurred. I think it's because I don't like to see my kind of autism as a disability, but it's probably the only aspect of my kind of autistic traits that I would admit to being sort of on like leaning in the kind of disability space. But I like to think like I can overcome most things or find ways around most things. But I guess the point that I'm making is you know, if the space in which everyone socializes and meets is, I know in rowing, the space that we socialized every single day was really bright, really noisy, really smelly, really busy. All of these things. It was an absolute sensory overload after having trained all, you know, for 2 hours, go and sit in a room, be overloaded, train for another 2 hours. So like I was just so stressed all the time and just at maximum effort that I didn't really get a chance to be the best teammate that I can be. I was probably more snappy. I, you know, I didn't have any extra energy or capacity to give to the people around me. So I think even in a kind of social sense, this is really important. It's not just important for kind of performance or behavioral standards. Um, so it's really about understanding people so that they can, like I said, they can exceed their own expectations. Um, so as I said, like really like to try to bring this quite, for some it might feel like quite academic, um, wordy kind of concepts to life through lived experiences. So I thought I'd just paint a little bit more of a picture of my experience. Um, so I think, as mentioned, kind of bringing it all together, if we're looking at this through the lens of, you know, the way that I've just spoken about neurodiversity, my behavior as an athlete was always communication. It reflected whether the environment supported the way my brain worked or whether it clashed. And when the fit was right, my performance went up. So if I give you an example, I think Will told me to mention this. But I think if I give you an example of when it was really bad quickly, I was at oh, this is so embarrassing. So it was the National Indoor Rowing Championships, and they decided to like hold it in an arena and try and make it really spectator friendly. So they had like we were all in a pen before we went out to do the kind of ergo in front of the whole crowd, and there was like smoke machines, and we had to like walk past a camera and sort of do a thumbs up or like a sort of, you know, muscle pose and wave to the camera, and there was music blaring and there was like strobe lights, and then we had to do our ergos there, and then obviously it was terrible, which was really sad because I was like in good shape. And I really nearly I pretty much had a breakdown after that. But I was like, what is wrong with my brain? Like I'm always like ready to do something good, and then something happens and I just like it just never comes together. Something's always, and I think it was about that time that we started to piece together that, you know, I possibly had these kind of autistic traits, especially around sensory sensitivity. And I was diagnosed as autistic. I was titrated off a lot of the unnecessary medication I was on, developed a communication plan. So lots of positive things put in place after that. So really shaping the environment to kind of fit my unique cognitive profile. A year and a half later, my 2K went from, so that dire performance, it was like 6:59, and then a year and a half later I pulled a 6:42. So it really, really does make a massive difference when you really peel back the layers and you really understand, you know, the mismatches essentially. You know, what is this telling us, and what can we change? What is this behavior telling us, and what can we change? So, in terms of like what really helped me to thrive, one of them was clarity. So clear communication, transparency, and really understanding the why behind decisions. That really helped me to prepare mentally and emotionally, and to perform with confidence. Around that, I would say on a personal level, transparency was really, really key. when things were quite obscure and things didn't make sense, like I would absolutely ruminate on that. I and understanding the why is something that comes up over and over and over again, especially for like autistic people, just because of the thinking style, very bottom up. It's really important to understand the why, possibly as well because of like working memory problems. If you can't kind of hold all the pieces in your head at once, if you know the why, you can at least create them again when you forget them, if that makes sense. Or another way that I think about it is like my thinking style is like I have to know all the blocks for them to fit together, otherwise the whole thing tumbles down. So if you think about an archway, all of the blocks are relying on each other. If one of them's missing, the whole thing falls down. So that's kind of how I see my thinking style as well. So understanding the why, it's an absolute necessity. It's not just a nice to have. And if I'm asking questions over and over again, it's because the communication's broken down. It's not because I'm not listening, and it's not because I don't trust your experience. It's simply, yeah, wanting to know more, because I need to know more. So another thing that really helped is curiosity from coaches. So when coaches when they asked rather than assumed. So, if they said like, how do you learn best, or how do you communicate best? Like how can we make this work for you? That's when I really felt understood instead of judged. So like creating kind of psychological safety in that way. Having time to process. So for different people, it's different. For me, I think I possibly alluded to it, but emotions are a funny thing for me. Um, they're both big and also elusive. Like I have something called alexithymia, which a lot of autistic people have, which is a difficulty in identifying and expressing emotions. So it's almost like I feel them, but I can't. It's hard to grasp them and process them and communicate them, which makes it kind of harder to deal with. Um, but having time to kind of settle and think and build relationships at my own pace, and for me to connect kind of authentically and sustainably really helped. Um, Having agency and autonomy, so having control over parts of preparation, warm-up routines, really helped, especially because there are a lot of other factors that are not typical that I'm dealing with. So that flexibility really, really helps because it's hard to communicate. If you're basically a walking, I explained this to someone the other day. If you're basically like a walking coping mechanism, if you do this because of this and this because of this and this because of this, um, explaining to someone why you have to do something different is not easy at all. So just having someone say, okay, that's fine, I trust you, is massive. And so that goes into kind of the like last point, which is being trusted and seen. Like I said, I cannot communicate all of the ways that my brain is different and why I do what I do, but I do what I do for a reason. And just to have that trust that I've thought it through, that really, really helps. Um, so in terms of possibly what didn't help as much, definitely unclear kind of selection criteria or inconsistent decisions or shifting expectations like led to rumination. And so that's like the repetitive thinking, the like repetitive negative thoughts and that looping, um, and uncertainty. And I can, like a lot of autistic people, I can sit on an ergo and churn out the same score over and over and over again. So that repetitivity like really, really helps in that respect. But if I latch on to a negative thought, I can also churn over that over and over and over and over again. So a bit of help around that is really key. Like even if it's something I don't want to hear or you perceive I don't want to hear, it's better to have that clarification. So it's better to not shield someone from an uncomfortable truth, just say it so that they're not ruminating. Ruminating is worse than dealing with a decision that they don't like. As I mentioned before, sensory overload in training and racing. So, crowd noise, busy boating areas, constant calls, loud gyms, even if it's just being able to wear like some loop earplugs or turning the Cox box down can really, really help. Misinterpretation of behaviors. So, needing time to be alone to kind of decompress, but that being misread as antisocial or just engaged is was actually quite hurtful. Or like, I remember I got called a bully once because of basically I was just like really honest about some feedback that yeah, I wouldn't do it again, but that was not my intention. And for me, that was like, it was like a stab to the gut. Like, it's just not what I'm about at all. So yeah, misinterpretation of behaviors was really difficult. Um, you know, environments with low psychological safety. So, long busy days at the training center without kind of real recovery time and not feeling safe to say like I need time to decompress. Like I'm someone who can train really, really hard and then I can nap really, really hard. Like I need that up and that down. Like I'm not a level person. It's all or nothing. So feeling like I can't say that was really difficult. And then probably finally like feeling both overstretched and stifled. I think it's quite a common it's not misconception is not the right word, but we're running low on time, so I'm not going to try and find the right word. But I think when we talk about like supporting neurodivergent people, especially those who are autistic, we talk about the importance of routine and structure. But what I would say is that is important, but I would say flexibility is also important. So like flexibility within routine and choice within routine. So, if you were going to design a set of sessions, I would say, it always has to have a routine, start, middle, and end. And maybe there's a set of like 5 different exercises that you flip through, but that's the combination of flexibility and choice and routine. So I think, and that will really, really help with people feeling like that regulation and not feeling like they're being overstretched but stifled at the same time. So with that, shall I hand back over to you,
Yeah.
Will?
Kara,
I was only 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes over.
I know. I know. Yeah, this was that was just so amazing. I just first want to just thank you so much. I love always hearing uh it's so amazing hearing your perspective and really from your true experiences and that story that you told, I thought when we met before Summit was so interesting to hear about your 2K score, something that matters across the board to all of the rowing coaches on this call. We the 2K score is a thing, and so hearing your kind of the bad setting that you were placed in and how that really affected your ultimate performance versus the good setting and having the proper diagnosis and the proper, you were set up for success. And I think that's just so it was just so cool and so like clear. The 2K score dropping like, almost 20 seconds like at an elite level is just so wild and so anyway, just really appreciated you sharing that. Any so there was a question that was asked earlier in the chat. Flo, do you mind asking your question?
I was just basically asking, like, when you suspect that there may be an athlete that is neurodivergent, how do you approach the conversation or start the conversation if it hasn't already been communicated by the athlete or the parent?
I think, yeah, it depends on the age, but I think what I would do is I would sort of frame it as, um, having a conversation with them or even their parent and just saying like, I've noticed that you do this. Um, Either why is that or can I help in some way? So you're kind of like making an observation about a behavior, but you're not trying to label it or identify it. Um, and then I think naturally, um, if a person does have a diagnosis and they just haven't disclosed it, you are starting that kind of journey of building a relationship and building that trust. Um, so that they may feel like they can disclose that at some point. If they don't have a diagnosis, well, what does a diagnosis do? It just helps us. I kind of see it as it guides us to a place in the library. So it guides us to the autism section. Then we have to pick the right books, the right chapters, the right paragraphs, the right words. So you can actually kind of bypass that. And you can go straight to kind of like, what am I observing? What are you feeling? Like, what is the purpose of that behavior? I think that's what you really want to understand is a person doesn't need a diagnosis to support their behavior and their experience. And I think what I would steer away from is encouraging that or labeling anyone. But I think you can still observe behavior and talk about behavior and what that means for that individual. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. In the right environment. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I think we got time for one more. I guess I've got one. Caragh, do you mind going back to the previous slide?
I can try.
Perfect. So I just thought that like what helped me thrive in that list is like such an actionable list for all of the coaches and board members and administrators on the call. I thought the way that you laid that out is is beneficial for everyone, right? Not just someone who's labeled, as is autistic or anything, but like every athlete can benefit from all of those that helped you specifically. And I just thought again, you using your experience and your story and expertise to really bring this to like entire teams. I think everyone can benefit from all of those. So I really loved that list and appreciate you sharing that with us. So, um,
I have a quick question. Sorry, I couldn't do the hand raise. Um, so you went into this, you gave a little bit of the answer when you talked about kind of going into a negative thinking loop or kind of latching on to some negative thoughts. And what would be the best way to approach when I can see an athlete starting to go there?
Therapy? No, like, um, so I think getting to the root of what they're ruminating about and why, and it might be that they need more clarity, and that's why they're ruminating. And like I said, sometimes it's the unknown that is the most stressful bit. So if it's that they're fretting about a decision, well, even if it's like not what they want to hear, it's better to hear it in that way. But then also in terms of like personal strategies, sometimes like having a mantra, like for example, like be more Teflon, and some people, like I know that I'm quite visual, so I would think about like a Teflon frying pan, and I would have to think about like words just flowing off me, or like the therapist I worked with, she was so good. She said like think of yourself as like sat down observing the traffic, and the thoughts going by are the traffic, and they come and they go. And so it's quite common with like autism and also ADHD. If you think about like um, the sort of processing and regulation, almost like you kind of get sucked and stuck to something. It's that inability to like manage focus. You're either hyper focused or you're like, oh, like you're not focused at all. So it's like over focusing on a thought or a word. And so yeah, these strategies are really helpful for not just autistic people, but those of ADHD and everyone, to be honest. But yeah, for me it was very much like um getting to the root of what I'm ruminating about and just fronting it up. Like there's what's the saying? It's like something about there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Like the worry is like the worst bit and the unknown is the worst bit. So actually getting clarity is really helpful. And then yeah, seeing if they can have some kind of personal strategy where they have that mantra or be more Teflon or just try and let the thoughts or the words slip off of you. Um, yeah, there's quite a lot of like overlap, like I said, between obsessive compulsive, ADHD, autistic thoughts, but you see those tendencies a lot in athletes and high performing athletes as well. Um,
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much again, Kara. Always great to hear you speak. I did want to put out one announcement. So I got the opportunity to, Kara put together a course on the launch. And so if you're interested in taking that course, we will put that in the resources. But yeah, we literally have a course called Coaching Athletes Who Are Neurodiverse, and it is produced by Kara. So again, really appreciate all of your time and expertise. We're going to go ahead and take an 11-minute break. We will be back here at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for our next session on fundraising. So we'll see you
Kara,
all.
sorry, I just want to say, Kara, make sure you check out the chat before you go because you got a lot of shout outs
oh,
and
that's good.
gratitude in there. So
No,
thank you.
you always worry when there's not many questions. You're like, oh, that
Oh, it
that
filled
went
up.
down like a sack of potatoes.
It filled up for sure. So yeah, check that
Okay.
out. And thanks again. We'll see everybody back here in 11 minutes.
Thanks.
Uh, So we are going to shift to our next panel. Um, and this panel I am really excited about. There's so much experience. One of the things, obviously, as we all know, within our own rowing programs and clubs and organizations, fundraising is key to having success, especially with the efforts to build inclusion, build access. We need to financially support ourselves and our programs. And we have four real experts in fundraising, in thinking about fundraising, in creative fundraising. So I really encourage you all to lean in and dig in here for this next session. So I'll do a quick intro and then I'll pass it to our moderator. So joining us, we have two grantees actually. The first is Christy Anderson. Christy Anderson is the executive director of Row LA, who's built community-driven support for girls rowing in Los Angeles. They are an amazing organization. I'm sure many of you, if not most of you, or all of you know about Row LA, and Christy is the executive director there. Karen Shackelford is the executive director of Baltimore Community Rowing. I got the opportunity to go see her program in person last month, and it was incredible. It was an amazing program. She has led innovative outreach and fundraising efforts to expand access in Baltimore. And then Elle Carolyn from the Gold Cup Foundation. Some of you may have applied for grants. Some of you may have received grants from Gold Cup, but they are an inclusion-focused rowing fund that supports initiatives nationally. Moderating our panel today is our very own Chief Development Officer, Lori McBride, and she's going to guide our discussion around creative fundraising strategies and driving success when applying for grants. So Lori, I will pass the mic over to you. Welcome, and thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Will. All right, we have 45 minutes to cover all of fundraising, so we better get started. No, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. And we have 3 panelists who have such diverse backgrounds in where they're coming from, and then how they've kind of taken all of their transferable skills and brought them into the fundraising world. And I think that's an important point for everyone on this call. No one grew up with the dream of being a fundraiser, I don't think. Certainly I didn't. I came from a coaching background, and these 3 panelists are going to tell you a little bit about their backgrounds and how all those transferable skills, how you can all use those to then bring them into your fundraising, and how to continue to grow your fundraising at whatever area that you are in, whether it's coaching, whether if you're an administrator of a club, or what it might be. Just a couple of logistical things. Please put questions in the chat, because I'll be monitoring the chat as we go. And if I can, I'll weave them in because I wanted the questions to be really pertinent and timely. But if we don't have time and I don't get to what's in the chat, we'll try and come to it at the end. So what I'd love for each panelist to do to start is just tell us a little bit about the background. I know Will mentioned kind of what their current job is, what their current position is, but how that their past experiences brought them to where they are, because I think a lot of people on the call will be able to relate. So let's actually start. Karen, let's start with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori. Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Shackelford. I'm the executive director at Baltimore Community Rowing. We are a community boathouse located in Baltimore, Maryland. Our boathouse is located in one of the most under-resourced neighborhoods in Baltimore City. And as such, we really center diversity, equity, and inclusion in all that we do. We try to build a rowing community that reflects the metro area that we are in. We have 500 members in our organization, youth and adults, and we pull from Baltimore City and 5 surrounding counties. And in the 2025 school year, we did 1,300 Baltimore City public school students. We introduced that many students through rowing in the classroom and through field trips to our boathouse. We have 120 free community rowing seats a year. 40% of our youth athletes are on scholarship. So we do a lot of fundraising to make sure that we're able to provide community access. Me personally, I began rowing as a club rower at a small liberal arts school, part of the University of Maryland system called St. Mary's College. It was a club team at the time. I got super involved very early, as many club rowers do, in just running the program and coaching. And I've coached and administered programs across Maryland for about 30 years. So if you were to walk up to me in a room full of rowers, I would identify myself as a coach ahead of even being an executive director. That's where my passion lies, being in a launch. I came to Baltimore as full-time director of youth rowing in 2019, transitioned to executive director in 2020, and haven't looked back, honestly. My skill sets, I think, in terms of fundraising, what I kind of tend to bring to a table, again, because I come to it from a coaching background, as many of you probably do, is just my enthusiasm for the sport, right? I think that there is a huge benefit to being genuine and enthusiastic about what you do. And I think probably anybody in this room would be able to speak about their program at length, with great enthusiasm in front of anybody. And I think that's a huge skill set in fundraising. I love to write. I had an English degree decades ago. That has served me well, being able to tell your story. I know Christy's going to talk to that later. But being able to tell your story well and write it well is super helpful when you're going for grants. And then just being, for me as an executive director, being present in a program, in all my programs, doing ride-alongs with launches. If you're an administrator first, and you don't have a coaching background, or you find yourself behind a desk a lot, what I find really enhances my fundraising skill set is getting into a launch with my coaches and making sure that I'm able to tell the story accurately of what we do. Again, hopefully actionable skill sets that a lot of you guys in the room have.
Thanks, Karen, so much. That was really helpful. And let's shift now to Elle. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Elle Carolyn. I am with the Philadelphia Gold Cup Foundation, even though I actually live in Cleveland, Ohio now, just to keep everyone really confused. But the Gold Cup is a race that dates back to the 1920s, and its founding origin story is actually based in socioeconomic discrimination when John B. Kelly Sr. Was not allowed to participate in the Henley Royal Regatta because he was working class and an Irish Catholic bricklayer. And so the origins of the cup and the work the Schuylkill Navy did many, many years ago, it was around doing what they think is right and providing inclusion and accessibility to all. And so there's a very storied, the Gold Cup has a very unique story, but I know that is not the focus for today. But when we brought the race back in 2011, we opened the race obviously to women because we are, it was 2011 at the time, why not? But we also wanted to make sure that we were supporting and making our sport accessible in the Philadelphia area. And over the years, we've always tweaked our model with the racing. And in 2020, we really wanted to do more and support youth rowing in the United States, especially removing some of the barriers to the sport and allow more young, men and women of color into the sport. And so we actually partnered with the head of the Charles Regatta and introduced our grant fund where we are in our 5th year, and we have awarded grants, ranging from $5,000 to $25,000 to different programs throughout the United States to, address and support many of the organizations. I know I've had many conversations looking at some of the names of people on this Zoom today about just, how do we make the sport more accessible, more comfortable, more safe. We're really excited to be here. I will say with the Gold Cup, we are completely volunteer run. So I actually do have a day job. I work in wealth management. There's that nice balance there. So I'm also familiar with relationship management and fundraising, and also the Gold Cup to support not only our race, but also the grant fund. We do fundraising to secure our own steward. So I kind of see it from both sides of being a grant maker and a fundraiser. In terms of rowing, I was an injured runner who turned into a coxswain in college at College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, and absolutely fell in love with the sport, but most importantly, probably the people, which is why I stayed with it after college. Was very involved with Philadelphia City Rowing and working with Libby, Peter, Tony Schneiders, and Catherine Reddick with getting that program up and running in 2010 or 2011, and have just, really wanted to give back to a sport that gave so much to me. So
that's such an awesome. I could listen to that history of the regatta all day. So I appreciate the version, and I'll probably pick your brain at some point after. All right, let's turn to Christy now and just some of your background.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for everybody joining. And I'm new to rowing in the community, but I am excited. I get to see so many familiar faces, so it's really nice to be here. So Row LA is an all-girls rowing program. We are the only girls only out of Los Angeles, and our mission at our core is to provide equity into the sport of rowing. And at our core, we get girls to college. So our metrics are rowing scholarships, which we have had the privilege of having alumni go to Boston University, Washington, Portland, incredible schools across the country. But also our measurement is that these girls believe that they can make it to college. And so they go on merit scholarship because of the process and the environment that rowing provides. And a lot of these girls are First Nation. Our aim is to have at least 50% of our athletes on scholarship. So again, similar to everybody who's been talking, is to provide access and opportunity to the sport and to the water. Certainly, we are so close to the coast, and hearing girls who have never been to the water or experienced any activities, we are trying to remove those barriers to elevate all girls. In my experience, I am a girl of programs. It's been a while, but after school and athletic programs, I'm the sum of those parts. It provided a safe place. It empowered me. It taught me how to deal with people who I, didn't get along with and got along with. And so I have a real passion for girls programming. I spent 15 years in corporate marketing. And I think with that, as everybody knows, you have to tell a story and you have to be curious about your target audience. And I think that really evolved my ability to fundraise. And so about 10 years ago, I moved over to mission-driven work. I've been lucky enough to work in some incredible organizations. And then I know Liz is Greenberger, our founder, is on the call. So, Row LA is special. It started in 2009 with the idea of creating diversity. And Liz is somebody who's empowered people in the organization. And again, part of our soul is that we don't sit here and hope things happen. We work really hard to collaborate with other people to make things happen. So I'm very, very proud to be part of the organization and here today.
Thank you so much. And I think hopefully hearing the backgrounds of all three of these incredible women and the things that they've done is spurring some questions. I know I'm already thinking a couple of different questions, but I want to use the time and jump right to it. We're going to start with Elle because I know we all have questions about grants. Grants is such a broad blanket term, and I would guess that almost everyone on this call has written or applied for grants. And so, Elle, can you, as someone who has reviewed grants and helps in that and helps distribute grants, talk to us about one, what makes a proposal stand out, specifically for your Gold Cup, and then what are some of the big mistakes that applicants make?
Yeah, I think, first off, grants, applying for them, it's a really difficult process. And some of these grant making organizations, they obviously have a limited amount of funds and slots that they can offer. And so it's, to Lori's question, how do you make your application stand out? And how do you even get it past kind of like their, a program is like kind of first cut of their total pool of applicants? How do you get to that final application range where you could really show off your program and what you're doing? And I think the first thing, speaking at a high level, and then we could kind of get into a little bit of what the Gold Cup and Head of the Charles look for is, first and foremost, does the grant application, does your program, does it align with the mission of the grant making program? So obviously for the Gold Cup and Head of the Charles, we are looking for under 19 or, high school, scholastic type, competitive rowing. And so we've made a point even to say in our applications, we spell out the word competitive because board members from the Gold Cup, as well as the head of the Charles, we feel that competing and racing is a really important part of a student athlete's development. It's not just the learning to row experience, but we all have felt that competition helps shape them as well. And making sure that if you have a competitive racing program, that you're able to articulate that well. I think also, so once making sure that your mission aligns with the grant, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's also when you need to know when to cut your losses and be like, I'm not going to try to like squeeze ourselves into this. Not every grant is for every program. And so it's also, you know, making sure that you're investing your time and energy on the grant applications, which I realize are not always fun, you know, that you're investing your time wisely too and trying to set yourself up for success. Making sure that, you know, you can really articulate what the need is for your program and what you're applying for the grant for. With our program, we actually try to keep it open-ended because we want to learn more from everyone here. What are their struggles? You know, where are you having funding issues? For some programs, it may be transportation. For other programs, it may be swimming lessons or wraparound programming. For other programs, we have seen coaching expenses, so they could pay for some of the coaching training or even to help fund some of the salaries so they can recruit more coaches and have more of that support for their students. But being able to define and articulate your need really well and convincingly is really important. And then obviously having a plan around how you want to address this. So can you actually do what you're proposing with the money? We're really kind of looking into that. I think a lot of a lot of grant makers, they want to see if you are being good financial stewards with your money too. So you may see sometimes in these applications asking for budgets over the past 3 years. And I know there are some programs on the call that are very tenured and they may be able to have, you know, several years of budgets. But if you're a newer program or a startup, you know, that shouldn't be a deterrent. You can show a plan and how you want to allocate funds. There are ways to address that, whether you're, you know, a newer program in your journey or you're more tenured. But, you know, do you have a plan? Will you be a reliable steward with your money and how it is spent? And then obviously, you know, I think a big one is also there's always the question about outcomes and, you know, how will you measure those results? And this is always one that at times I go back and forth about because, you know, listen, I think everywhere right now there is a huge focus on data and dashboards, but we are all human, and what we are doing and what each of your programs' impact is around humans. It's not around data points. And so it's how do you find that balance of showing some of the qualitative and quantitative data together so we can see how it is working. And then sustainability or long-term impact. What we're always looking for is, you know, let's say, for example, if we fund a program for 1 or 2 cycles, if we then make a decision not to fund them because we want to support other programs and, you know, share the wealth, will they be able to have, you know, grow and develop enough that they aren't dependent on our funding year over year? What happens if we're unable to fund? And so we want to see that they are also making the changes and growing and developing that they can become more independent or that they can open up to other grant sources. And so, you know, those are some of the areas that we look at. I would say in terms of mistakes, I think honestly, the quality of applications that the head of the Charles and the Gold Cup have received have been really good. And, you know, it is always very difficult to try to narrow down. You know, I know US Rowing has a grant program. I know AMBT has a grant program, and it is always hard because you're going through the process and you wish you had infinite amounts of dollars so you could support everyone. But I think, again, it just goes to matching, you know, making sure that your program is, and especially in the mind of the Gold Cup and the head of the Charles, we do want to see that competitive racing element to it. So we want to see that the students are not only learning to row, but that they are put into racing environments. They do have the opportunity to compete throughout the year several times. And then I think, again, just, the structure that they can be measuring how they're using the money and that they have the plan. If it's not well articulated, there's chances that we will be looking at other applicants that can, spell it out a little bit more strongly.
That is awesome. That answered just about everything. I think in terms of, I love the fact that so many times I think people do spin their wheels on applying for the grants that just aren't the right fit. And so once you do find that fit, I think that, and really taking the time to go through that properly, I think, to me, in my experience, that's been one of the biggest things. And I think you hit the nail on the head in so many of those areas. So thank you. If there's any questions now about grants, I would urge people. We're going to move on a little bit on our topic, but please feel free to come back, because I think we all have that grants is such a big part of what we do in fundraising. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about the storytelling and just the narrative and work through some of that authentic engagement that I know Karen also mentioned, but we're going to ask Christy, with your background in that storytelling world, how can clubs define and tell their story authentically, and how does that, and in order to connect with donors?
And thanks, Elle, for setting this up so wonderfully, wonderfully. There is that we all are doing good work, and we need support in many ways to achieve the goals that we set out to achieve. I think really what it's rooted in is knowing your mission. And a lot of these things that we probably talk about seem so obvious or so simple, but they really aren't. So I think for everyone to take a step back and really understand the mission and your vision, because every decision you make, from exactly what Elle said, is like the funders, approaching the funders, your staffing, your programs, how you grow, all of those things roll up to the mission. And if everybody in your organization talks about the mission separately, then it makes it difficult to ask for funding or ask for support or ask for volunteers. So even if you are 100% sure, and this is it, I would suggest that everybody just take a step back and reevaluate and revisit your mission. Because that's the essence of who you are. In addition to helping you write grants and tell your marketing, essentially, it also reinforces the culture of your organization. If the program wants to do something and then administrators want to do other things, or for the board wants to do another thing, it really makes it difficult to rally around the central mission. And, we're rowers, we all need to row in the same direction, because if people are in the boat have different views, then it stops the progress. So that's kind of the other piece of it, knowing who you are. The narrative is also, to your point, is the data. So it's like, how much does it cost to run your program? A lot of funders do, particularly outside the sports space. If it's an education space, if it's adaptive space, there's a lot of funders out there, but they want to know the nuts and bolts, right? So how much does it cost? And in nonprofit, if you have a nonprofit club, it scales to 70% of your funds should go towards program costs. And so that's kind of a general guideline, 70 to 30. And so for you to understand, what does it take from supplies to transportation to coaches' fees? What does it cost to achieve your goals? So that's something that will help the narrative. And I love that you said that, Elle, too. And it's not only about that data and its input, right? So what funding, what effort do you put into it, and then the outcomes? And so do you have showing progress? That is very important of your narrative, is that, we are lucky. We've been around 2009, and we have girls who their mom signed them up and they had no idea what was happening, and they, like people on this call, fell in love with the sport and it ended up going to college. The 70/30, sure. So 70% of your total operating budget should be focused on programs. So that's where that comes from. So again, from program staff, supplies, transportation, there's line items that make up that 70%. Then the 30% is split between operational cost, rent, things that you use to run the business. And then you can break down into fundraising. So those in nonprofit, those would be the big buckets: program costs, operational costs, and fundraising. There's a lot of Propel is a nonprofit. They help you with accounting. So if it's propel.com, I think. I'll find it and I'll put it in the chat, but they can help you kind of structure that budget. And they do give 1 hour of support pro bono to nonprofits. So they're a great resource. And then the narrative, and again, just on the balance side, and it's like those testimonials. I mean, the stories of, again, the girls who didn't know what rowing was. Their mom put them into summer camp, and now they're going to college, and it shows the progress. And it doesn't mean that they started day one and they became, the competitive athlete. We have a lot of girls who kind of took a minute to fall in love with the sport, or took a minute to kind of embrace the commitment it takes to operate at a higher level. But they got there because we made space for those girls. And from the day and a half that we've heard already, that with our club, we are creating those spaces. And so the progress, we definitely know the pillars, we know the progress, what we want our girls to follow, but we are making sure that we meet the girls where they are. So those testimonials, that's what funders like to see too, because at the end of the day, people give because they feel compassionate about it, and they feel it's a nice thing to do, and it's a bottom line thing, but they're not going to feel unless they buy in. So knowing your story, knowing your mission, telling stories around that through testimonials, through progress, through to exactly what you said, that if you've overcome some adversity, I mean, everybody does. Thanks, Jess. Every club has adversity. And I think it's to embrace that, because again, it's like, here is the problem. This is how we solved it. And so telling those stories, and be prepared to tell those stories, and then have data to back it up. I think if you have those elements, it's a compelling story. People want to do good, particularly on the funding side. And certainly we work in it every day to empower our athletes to be the best that they can be in the excellence that they want to pursue.
Thanks, Christy. I love that you mentioned just like the feeling, right? It's creating that connection point between the funder and the stories and the people. And that is so powerful, and really is the most rewarding part, I think, of what you can do in fundraising. I know last night at US Rowing, we had a trustee call with our foundation board, and we brought athletes, our national team athletes, on the call to be able to have some of our most engaged donors ask them questions and hear about. We brought our chief high performance officer on to be able to connect them to the work that we do and what they're actually funding. And so I just love the way you talked about that. And then also going back to what Karen said, is just how you talked about going out on the launch and really being in the place that you love most, and making sure that the people who are most engaged, or who you want most involved, you're bringing them in onto the launch with you. You're showing them exactly what you're doing on a daily basis in order to be able to really connect them with the need, right? And I think that is what is so powerful. So thank you for sharing. All right, let's switch. I'm gonna ask Karen now, put her on the hot seat for a moment. For small clubs, first-time fundraisers, where do they start? What's the plan?
So I would say, coming in 2019, the first time that I had to really deal with a fundraising scenario in the sport, right? Like most of us are used to a model of pay to play. And coming to Baltimore really challenged what I knew about how to fund a sport. And a sport that is as equipment intensive and resource intensive as rowing, right? So I think you have to start with what you have, right? You have to start with an evaluation of like, what do we have? Where are we? What do we do well? Right. And hopefully all of us sitting in this room do rowing really well. And so then it becomes a question of, are you doing the work that you want to do? Are you providing the access that you want to provide? If you're starting from zero, how do you create space in your budget to start? One of the cool things that I think I heard echoed yesterday in the para rowing session is like, you don't have to start big. Like, you don't have to say, hey, we're going to serve 1,300 kids. You can start with like, how do we get 5 kids through the door for free? In Baltimore, we have a pretty robust grant structure. We have a pretty robust fundraising structure. But a couple of years ago, we looked at, how do we start providing scholarships for adult athletes, right? And how do you build that pipeline? And so one of the things that one of my coaches came up and just out of the blue in the middle of a year, program year and said, hey, like my CrossFit gym wants to come in and, and take a learn to row class, basically like a corporate learn to row structure on a smaller scale. Can we do that? And can we, instead of charge them a little bit more and tell them that this is for access for scholarships, right? And so that became a really popular, really well subscribed program for us. We have a little niche in CrossFit gyms in Baltimore, right? Like pulling those folks who are super passionate about their indoor rowing, like onto the water for a couple hours. But, charge $50, $75 a head. And, at the end of a day where you've put 24 people on the water, not only have you created more advocates for your program and more awareness around what you do, but, you've raised $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. So, things like that, like thinking of small scale ideas, if you're not quite at the point where you want to, write a large grant, I think is those are some really initial steps. And then after that, you kind of evaluate, how are you going to build that narrative that Christy was just talking about, that story. And some of that comes back to what Elle said, like knowing your funders, knowing who you're funding for, knowing what data is important to them, right? So like Elle said, for Gold Cup and Head of the Charles, it's competitive rowing at the high school level. It's taking your story and knowing how to iterate on that and how to take it to different funders in different ways. We have a lot of funders that I have some funders that are interested in funding diversity, right? Are interested in funding athletes of color on my team. I have different funders that are just interested in funding students who go to Baltimore City Public Schools. I have funders that are interested in certain neighborhoods in Baltimore. So like, how do you take that data and interpret it? I think is huge. And so if you're not in the mode of collecting data, like figuring out what is the data that is important, right, to the funders that you're trying to target, I think that's a really important first step. And then calculating not only your cost but also your value. We went after some state operating funding in 2024 and actually received a little bump of state operating funding, right? When we take 10 ergs into a school, what is the value of that equipment, right? What is the value of the U-Haul? We all know we're not buying ergs every year. We're not replacing our entire erg fleet. We're not replacing our entire boat fleet, but it is really, how do those boats get replaced? They get replaced in most programs by fee-for-service programming. If you have free seats in those boats, how are those boats getting replaced, right? So that value needs to be calculated, I think, into any funding ask. Hey, we put 2/8 of kids on the water for free 5 days a week, right? What is the cost of that? That's $80,000, So it gives a sense of, especially for funders that don't know rowing, a sense of what is involved in the sport. And then I think the last thing that I've found super helpful, because we have a lot of local funders, a lot of folks that are focused on Baltimore City and students and outdoor activities for students. is having photos, right? Having photos that reflect the true nature of your program and are true to life, right? We are obviously always trying to put athletes of color in our boats, but our boats aren't 100% athletes of color. So, showing the entirety of our program in our photos and showing, putting that forward to funders, because a lot of our funders don't even know what rowing is. They're like, oh yeah, that canoe thing, and they do they do the arm thing. So having those photos, or having brochures or having, I always have some sort of PDF document at the end, if I can't put the photos in, with the narrative, that just shows a little bit of what we do. Because I think it's, seeing kids on the water is super impressive. Seeing them, carrying big boats down to the dock, it really informs folks about what the value of the sport and the teamwork involved in things.
That's great. I love the point that you started with too, is just evaluate what you have. What are your assets, right? That's what you're selling. That's what you're trying to promote in everything that you do. And whether it's athletes having those photos, all of that builds into what Christy was talking about with like building that narrative and creating that story and then making it compelling so that people understand exactly what the need and where it goes and how it's being used appropriately. So it all really does fit together. Thank you, all three. So I do see a couple of questions in the chat, and I'm going to throw it out to whoever would like to answer. I know Jenny put in our United We Row grants, but how do you find grants? Like what are ways that either Karen or Christy maybe that you've used to kind of find to look up, or is it word of mouth? Is it Google searches? What do we think?
I don't know that Christy might have a better answer for this. I inherited a few local grants when I came into the position that, are consistent funders of ours. And then obviously we've had Gold Cup funding, we've had US Rowing funding, we've had AMBTIF. So, those were very specific moments in funding that we had the program ready and we were able to apply for and receive. I would say start looking for who are your local funders? We have a community foundation in Baltimore. So, that has, I don't know, 5 or 6 different funds that we can apply to. And it's not, if you're starting from scratch, you don't need to go after a $25,000 grant the first time. It can be $5,000, it can be $2,000, like any of those bumps, helps any of us, right? Looking for who's funding in your community. And what are they funding? Are they funding school students? Are they funding access to the outdoors? Are they funding, looking for that has been key for us.
And I would add that's exactly how we started too, and just in the prospecting phase. Everybody has a neighborhood council. So a neighborhood council is a good place to start because that breeds advocates. The Rotary clubs, the business, tourism business associations, because they do have a component of giving. To Karen's point, they actually are a little more for, between probably 500 and 2,500, but to get started, they are great and they are collaborators. So that would help, for us, that helps us get better because they collaborate on the grant and really help us as it scales up. I mean, your AI of choice, put in the keywords, and sometimes they bring up the family foundations with your area. Businesses, banks, again, have a marketing or a community relations aspect of their business. So it does. And there's there's sorry, so that like Charity Navigator or Grant Watch. So there are some fee-based platforms that help you search for grants. But in order to kind of get you there, I would Google search or put, I am the executive director, or I run a a youth rowing organization in Los Angeles and looking for who's making grants, who would fund us or making grants now, and you will get a list of them, and then you go to the website, exactly like everybody's saying, and then you go to the website to see if you align, and then you got to find the person. So prospecting, there's a lot of different steps to it, but everybody, and I would, if you have other organizations, like Girls Who Run or any other charitable organizations, I would go to their websites and see who fund them, because that shows that they are community minded, and you can start with them as a list, a prospect list to start with.
Yeah, I think another great organization similar to Charity Navigator is Cause IQ, and I think their website might just be causeiq.com, but that sometimes can help you funnel down. And I think at some point there's a paywall or they want you to have a subscription, but you can start to do, especially by your local city or approximate area, and start to see not only some of those private family foundations, but if some of the corporations that may be headquartered or in your town, like if they have a nonprofit budget. And again, just to Christy's point, there is some of that research and digging, and being that it is 2025, I think probably there is a whole spectrum of people's comfort or discomfort level with AI, but at least how you can use it to help start and give you a head start. I don't think I would ever trust AI to write a grant application for me or a biography even. But AI certainly can help people, especially if you don't have staff or you're running into capacity issues with grant writing. AI is, something that people should, start to leverage just to help do some of the research, like Christy said, with some of the prospecting and pipeline development.
100%. Those are all really great tips. And I also see some really good resources in the chat as well. I do want to go back to Michael's question in the chat, because I think it's a good one. How important is it to provide wraparound services for funders, be they grantors, corporations, or individuals? I think many of us struggle with these. Anyone want to take that? Are you talking about specifically, Michael? And maybe that's
we have a requirement around that.
Okay.
I'm
great.
assuming that it's around our eligibility language in our grant, actually, Michael. Is that right or not?
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's a comment Amanda made to me years ago. She basically said, if you can do this, you'll be much more attractive. But I'll let the panel take over.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, and listen, again, every organization is different, and year over year, if people have watched the Gold Cup and Head of the Charles, we will tweak our eligibility because we're learning each year from our grantees and how we can best support them. We do not have an answer. Like, we are not looking for like one specific model, because what works in Baltimore most likely is not going to work in LA. And so that is how we lead, and we really want to be open and flexible. But we generally have seen in both within our sport and outside that where there is, add-on support. So if it is mentoring, if there are partnerships within the community, so relationships that you may have to, programs that maybe offer nutrition help or academic test prep or anything else, like the stronger relationships you have and are really firmly entrenched in your community, we generally find that those programs have, they're starting to set the foundation for that long-term success. And, I think Karen and Baltimore Community Rowing, like they've been a great example. You have wonderful, relationships and kind of, partner organizations, and, that, it benefits, like everyone. And so we like to see that programs are considering it, or if they have that.
Yeah, and I was just going to hop on to Michael and say, like, we are a great example of, we've got a 45-year-old boathouse. It's got Wi-Fi for exactly like 1 hour for half a person, and our program 15 years ago was trying to do SAT prep and all sorts of things going on in the boathouse. And I know I've gone through iterations of like, kids are coming early on the bus, so we're going to have homework help. No, like, like, oh, we can't hook that many people up to Wi-Fi, or, we don't even have a classroom space. So we've leaned really heavily into community partnerships. So we have certainly a community partner that's an after school, out of school time provider. Those student athletes come to us 2 or 3 days a week, depending on the season. But then they are with that community partner the other days of the week, getting the homework help, the tutoring, the mentoring, so we reference them pretty heavily, right? We've partnered with them for 6 years now. And partnerships work like both ways too, right? Like we partner with another organization that comes in just for 1 week every summer. They've come in for 6 years. This year, our coaches had the idea of, hey, these kids, it's a boxing gym, local boxing gym in Baltimore that does a lot of the same work that we do for providing access to sports. And our coaches said, hey, what if we take our student leaders who work in our summer camp all summer over to the boxing gym and so like, it was brilliant because one of my coaches was talking about it this week at our annual meeting of like, we are exposing our student leaders to what it's like to learn a new sport in a different environment and a different thing. So partnerships, looking for partnerships that don't only satisfy what you need, but like, how does that also amplify your programming and vice versa?
Lori, I am going to we're a couple minutes over. This flew by. So I just want to I'll pass it over to you, but Lori, if we can wrap a bow on this conversation, that would be great. And then we're gonna move to our final speaker for Summit. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, just 30 seconds. This was awesome. I feel like I learned things in this session, and all three of you are doing such good work. It is so great to hear from you. And I don't want to speak for you, but I know that we're all in this together. And this is something that if anybody has questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or any of the three, because I know the three of them are so giving of their time and energy. And we're appreciative of everyone signing on and listening.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, Karen, Christy, Elle, thank you all for your time and your expertise. And just it was awesome to hear the different perspectives and experiences. And Lori, thank you so much for moderating and running the session. So all right, we are going to shift gears for the last time of Summit. Closing us out, we have the Positive Coaching Alliance joining us. Our speaker is Pam Harith. Pam is a longtime athletic director, coach, and now senior facilitator with the Positive Coaching Alliance. Pam has worked with hundreds of athletic programs to build healthy, high-performing team cultures that bring out the best in everyone. Pamela, I will hand it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you as always.
Absolutely, Will. And while I have you, first of all, Christy, I worked with someone out at Row LA years ago. I'm in Maryland, coming to you live from Maryland. And I do want to let you know, in case people need to bail, that this session is not parents as partners. Will, I didn't know if you want to speak. So when I was looking at the menu, after speaking with Will at the beginning of the week, we did some work and some tweak and actually changed the name. I'm getting ready to show you here, to expanding opportunities for a positive youth sports experience. How do we understand, bridge the gap, and expand opportunities, the opportunity gap? Will, did you want to add anything before I?
No, I think yeah. So this session we kind of went back and forth with. So yeah, Pam, I'll pass it right back to you. Excited to close out the day with PCA. Anything you guys do is really awesome and will be super beneficial for our community. So, but yeah, I'll pass it right back to you.
Fantastic. And I just saw my partner join. So yeah, let me give you a little context and I'll hand it over to my partner, Aaron. I'm actually kind of excited about this. I love all our workshops. I'm a long-standing trainer, long-standing 20 plus years. So I've done a few in a minute. But we created this one really based after conversation with Will, and especially with organizations such as yourselves, when you think about all the benefits that come from sports and you think, who has access to those? Right. So this idea of, I know that Will was doing some work on how do we bridge that opportunity gap? So first of all, sort of, do we understand it? And then what are some of the tools and strategies? Before I turn it over to Aaron, I do want to say that this is, again, I just caught the tail end, the last 5 minutes of the fundraising. And man, mad props to whoever just ran that, because I saw the comments, and huge kudos for how valuable people found that. And I love that line, Christy. That was, this was for fundraising. And just so you know, no means no right now. I love that, right? Sort of like be persistent. So, but this is the beginning steps. We're going to give you some tools and strategies, but we're going to engage in a conversation, have you think about it. Some of you might think about this all the time in your organization, right? That might be your number one thing. How are we expanding, increasing opportunities? For some of you, maybe it'll be the first part of the dialogue. All right. So we hope that you find it helpful. And I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Aaron.
Thanks, Pam, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to share my screen and we're just going to jump right in. Quick introduction of myself. I love working with Pam and she'll be leading most of this discussion. But being a part of PCA has really helped me as a coach. I coached college baseball from 94 to 06, shifted over to full-time as a mental skills coach in 06 and have joined PCA since 2012. So love doing these workshops and just facilitating a discussion that can help us all add a couple of tools into our tool belt and affirm a couple of the things that affirm a lot of the things that we're already doing well. We do want to be able to connect with you, and this is optional, but we would love it if you would sign in. You can use the QR code on screen to do that, or I also dropped into the chat a link for signing in, and the first thing it's going to ask you is what workshop did you attend, and it is workshop code 59908. So just check the chat. You'll see that link if you want to sign in now. It'll just take you about a minute. Okay, let's jump into expanding opportunities for a positive youth sports experience. Curious if you've been to a PCA workshop before. This one is a customized one for US Rowing, but just a yes or no in the chat. Would you please answer the question, have you ever been to a PCA workshop before? Happy that the first couple of fast typers are yes, and oh, look at that. Okay, so we have had partnerships, but we've not done an event like this one to my knowledge, and so we have a mix of yeses and nos, and very grateful for the partnership that we've had on long going. Okay, so our goal is to change the culture of youth sports so that every child has access to a positive youth sports experience, regardless of their circumstance. And we are guided by the science of sports psychology. I like to define that as the study of what successful athletes do, but the information we share in our workshops is research-based. And while we're together today, I know it's a webinar, but we want to tap in to the amazing knowledge in the room. We're smarter together. We learn by being active and participating, whether it's in the chat or perhaps coming off mute or just thinking about how this applies in our specific situation. If you can have your camera on always, that's great. But, if you need to turn it off, totally fine. Take care of yourself, puts you in a better position to take care of others. Okay, let's get started with the discussion. If anyone wants to come off of mute, we will try to facilitate that, but I'm really looking for lots of people to answer this in the chat. Just starting with a little conversation piece here. What activities did you participate in when you were doing youth sports? For me, it was many years ago. So I see some rowing, but I see a wide range of other answers coming in to the chat. And I want you to think about the experience as a third grader, a fifth grader, an eighth grader, a high school varsity athlete, perhaps. And the reality is that we protect our children from some of the harshness of the world, and sports is very honest. And so participating in rowing, and for us as kids, many other sports, led us to growth. And so I want you to think about, what did you learn by your participation in youth sports faster than you would have learned without that, right? What are the life lessons that got accelerated for you personally by sports? And then I want you to think about rowing specifically for today's young people. It's certainly a connected question, right? What are the benefits that rowing participation will provide to our student athletes?
And again, you're welcome to come off of mute. We love to hear your voices as much as we like to read.
Confidence, teamwork.
Grit and resilience.
And in the chat, we see
Responsibility.
those same answers and a lot more. Christy, say that again.
Just responsibility, accountability.
Yeah. Anna, there's a good one for long term, right? Working effectively with people who may not be your best friends, people who you don't enjoy. Certainly, time management, communication skills, teamwork. I love the analogy, getting everyone rowing together, right? It's not always an analogy. Okay, so we know that those benefits won't exist if they don't participate. So retention and recruitment become such a important goal so that we can get all these benefits. The mental and emotional positive experience is linked to lower anxiety and depression. We get physical health and great habits of lifetime fitness. We get developing teamwork, social responsibility, life skills, and a greater likelihood of college attendance. We're building community, right? And so at PCA, we often like to start with our why. And so the question here for you is, why are you participating in today's workshop? You're investing your time. What's your why there? Okay, I see a lot of comments about growth mindset. Fantastic. To be our best self, always a great goal. As a mental skills coach, I try to help myself and others be the best version of ourselves more consistently. To get inspiration, yeah, and inspiration, motivation, whether it's kids or ourselves, it's a challenging thing. But the reality is that the world can be a beautiful place, and there is fantastic opportunities when we learn to tap into our own personal power and the power of others. So, what about the why of your athletes? How can understanding the why behind our athletes' participation inspire us as leaders to make sure they have the opportunity to participate? Can I get anyone to come off mute and comment on this question?
It gives them agency.
Absolutely. And in a world of instant gratification and entitlement, when they take ownership of the process, it's shown to be very motivating in today's world. So thank you for that. Dee Dee in the chat says to understand a new generation and how to best work with them and not be seen as that old guy or gal that doesn't understand youth. Certainly understanding their why and investing in learning their why is going to enhance that connection, right? And building that connection puts us in a position to motivate, to increase participation and enjoyment, all the benefits of participation as well. Okay, I want to share PCA's model of coaching. We really, many of you are familiar. We used to call it a double goal coach, pursuing these two goals, trying to get better in competition and in life. It's just we don't use that double goal coach terminology anymore, but it's the same thing. When we pursue success, then we're going to be developing competitors inside of sport and outside of sport. And it's really not two different goals. It's really one goal. The overlap is huge. So the question becomes, how do we deliver on developing competitors in and out of sport? And our answer is through three principles of positive coaching. The elm tree of mastery is about pursuing the question, how good can I be? How good can we be as a team? That's the mastery mindset instead of a scoreboard mentality where the focus is on the stats, the comparisons to others, and the results. The ELM is actually an acronym that helps us shift kids. I mean, despite the efforts of many coaches and athletes, many kids sit in a scoreboard mentality. And the Elm Tree of Mastery guides us on how to help them move over to a healthier perspective on what's going on. ELM stands for effort, learning, and mistakes help you grow. So when we celebrate effort, when we celebrate a comparison to self rather than a comparison to others, it motivates them to control the controllables. So Elm Tree of Mastery, effort, learning, mistakes help you grow. Filling the emotional tanks. Well, I'm curious where you're at right now. Meetings are not typically as fun as getting on the water, right? So can you just put in the chat, or if you're on screen, just hold up a finger from 1 to 10. Where are you at right now with your emotional fuel tank? Okay, Will, that's fantastic. Thank you. We know attitudes are contagious. We want to make ours worth catching. We also know that we're human, and some people have had a rough time recently. There's all sorts of things outside of our control that try to knock us off that ideal balance, and we want to be realistic. The reality is that the kids are going to show up with a range of emotional tank levels, and we hope to move the needle in the good direction through their participation. So filling emotional tanks, we talk about a magic ratio of 5 to 1. And what that means is we want to create an environment where the children are getting their emotional tanks filled 5 times for every tank draining communication. That doesn't mean we have to compliment them 5 times every time we coach them up. It means we want to teach them to fill each other's emotional tanks. We want to get the parents on board with this. We want to create an environment that puts a lot of positive deposits into that emotional fuel tank so that when those inevitable debits are needed, there's room to do that without them being in a bad place. Okay, and then the third principle is about honoring the game, and our acronym for that one is ROOTS. I will put this information into the chat as soon as I throw it to Pam here in a second. But the ROOTS stands for respecting the rules, officials, opponents, teammates, and self. And so we want to model and teach respect for the roots of the game. These three principles sit on a foundation of trust and relationships. We want to promote trusting us as leaders, but also teach the kids to trust themselves very much so, and each other. Not an easy process. Trust takes time and a dedication to discipline and reality. Okay, so my last reflection question for you before I give you our objectives and throw it back to Pam is, think about your rowing program and all the different families that are represented. Now, picture the athletes on these teams. Think about the community that surrounds your programs. Who might be unintentionally left out and why? Again, you can certainly go to the chat. This is not an easy question. Asking you to guess, ask you to just think what might be the case. Anyone willing to come off of mute and chat about that?
I'll jump in there. And those that we are struggling to reach, they get access to attract to our program, whether it be transportation or just not, them having internet access to our marketing and through our partnerships with other programs in the community.
Thanks, Michael. Anyone want to add? I think you're getting a lot of nods. What kinds of challenges do you think prevent some youth from participating? access, communicate, transportation. What else?
I see kids who've never heard of rowing in the chat box, Aaron.
Historical perspective that it's only for white males.
Yeah, thanks,
Yep.
Didi.
Yeah, same thing, what Didi just said, those that feel that they're not going to belong if they show up.
Excellent. Fear of the water. Okay, so Pam is going to lead us through understanding the sports opportunity gap by recognizing barriers to access, developing strategies to expand sports offerings and bridge that gap, and develop an action plan to expand offerings to your community. Pam, take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. So, show of hands. Oop. I just went on the wrong thing. How many folks here are also coaches? Do we have coaches on this call too, and leaders? Okay, so we have a variety. Fantastic. I want to lay a little bit more sort of context or things that I thought about just while you all were sharing and Aaron was presenting. And that is this. When you think about that last question about how does your why inform, how does their why inform, this idea of expanding opportunities, right? We often say to coaches, even when I do, in what I do, I'm a former high school athletic director, dean. I coach basketball and volleyball. I've been in the field of culture and leadership development for the last 10 years in my own business, and I've been a fan and a grower, a sponge of PCA for the last 20 years. But when I do this work, one of the challenges, I do this with my D1 teams and my D3 teams, or my high school teams. What happens if what your goals for your kid are on your team are different than theirs? Right? Do we still invite them in? Right? People are like, I want them to have a passion for rowing. I want them to love the sport. I want them to be able to get gritty and just love the sweat. And what if you have kids coming in who are like, no, you see that fuel tank there? Mine's normally about a 3. And when I come to practice and get to see my 4 best friends, I go up to an 8. I don't like the water. I don't like to work too hard. I don't really have a passion for it. But that really challenges us with this topic, right? If that's what we're being given or who we're being asked to serve, how do we make peace with that, right? Again, there's not an answer, there's not a right or wrong, but it's sort of for your consideration. So, understanding the sports gap opportunity, the opportunity sports gap, all right? So what is the sports opportunity gap, right? It's the unequal opportunities in youth sports participation faced by underrepresented and marginalized youth in comparison to those with more advantages, however we want to define that, okay? So I'm going to let you look at these numbers, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions here. Right? All right, participation gap, 16 to 25 from low to middle and higher income peers. 6 times higher dropout rate if there's financial constraints. 20% gap in Hispanic and non-Hispanic youth. This was one when I was talking to our trainee the other day that really surprised her, right? Not opportunity, but roster size. 1.2 million more high school boys roster spots than girls. Again, 19.5% of LGBTQ youth are likely to participate, and 38% lack of access for youth with disabilities. All right. So again, just a glance into the lens. So in the chat box, again, right, I'd love to begin the dialogue with somebody coming off of mute. Do any of these stats surprise you? And if so, how? No, I gotcha. Nope, nope, nope. Nothing surprises yet. Do any of these surprise you? All right. So if people are Not surprised. Okay, so for the most part, sort of not surprised, right? And we probably could have thrown it out if we'd said, maybe, uh, over under type of concept if I threw it out to you, right? So here then is specific to you. How do these stats compare to your community? Right? We're going to start getting a little more specific. So where do you see gaps in your community? Again, I'd love to hear some voices. I'm happy with the chat, but I'd love to hear some people come off. And again, it could be because of where you're located geographically. It could be because of what your school filters in. It could be a myriad of reasons, no judgment. But what are some of the things that you see in your community?
I can say something real quick.
Please.
So I mean, I'm on the collegiate side, but I've done over 15 years on the high school. But I'm at a university where 80% of the undergrads are female, and that's reflective on our collegiate team. So I have 4 men on the team, and the other 21 are female. So the men are like, why aren't we going to regattas? Why aren't we doing this? So it's the first time where I'm having to switch, and all the statistics are completely opposite. Because I've been with youth where it's all men, 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 and now it's all ladies. So it's been an
Yeah.
interesting spin.
Yeah. Thanks, Tamara. When we talk about that a little bit, I'd love to know, well, actually, and if you feel like um, sharing a little more just to launch us in while I have your voice, what do you answer? Or what do you, is there anything that you can do about it? What are you trying to do? Or what are you considering?
Yeah, so I mean, the guys were telling us too, like just from their overall fitness, they're faster than the ladies. So it's hard having so few of them there to actually motivate themselves to go faster. But on our side, I've been telling them, you're our biggest recruits. So if you want more men, it's going to come from you more so than from me.
Okay.
Because other guys aren't necessarily going to want to join if they're the only ones either. They need to be able to see that there's some already on the team. So, and it's just our first year, our first season on the collegiate aspect on this school. So we're brand new. We don't have a culture yet. We're not solid yet, but we're still growing.
Yeah, I love that, Tamara. Thanks for sharing. That's gonna, but I don't know, I always like to wait till the slide comes up. The last thing you said reminds me of something that we're going to share when we talk about sort of how do we bridge those gaps or expand with some scenarios. But you kind of named one, Tamara. You're like, I kind of empower to put the ownership back on the female rowers, right? I need you to help in recruiting, right? This might grow and because part of the thing we're going to do is say, where do we need to think outside of the box and the non-traditional ways for expansion, right? So if all of a sudden you're setting up your team, you're like, this is what recruiting looks like. This is how we go about it. That might be a way that works. Anyone else? We have better LGBTQ representation, but the rest holds true. Mirroring of recruits from a pool that is 62% Hispanic, 20% Black. This is a public high school. Yeah. Still working my team reflecting urban magnet. All right. Thanks, Kathleen. Great. So again, sort of with awareness comes choice, right? So what am I aware of, right? And then so what really is the next part of that prompt. So what barriers, and we started talking about this a little bit, Aaron did, but we're going to deep dive a little more, right? What barriers do you see daily in your community that limit access to sports participation for local youth? Again, we alluded to it earlier. I forget how Aaron posed the question, but what are some of the barriers that you see that limit access?
I can speak to this one a little bit. So I'm coming from the disability perspective. I know that a lot of the equipment that's associated with all disability sports, not just youth, it's very expensive. So, and many times, if you have a disability, there's a lot of added expenses. That would come before, playing a sport. And so I think that the financial aspect, along with the availability for the specific equipment need is a barrier.
Yeah. Thank you, Jillian. I have to scan to see who's actually talking, but thank you. And what I'm hearing in that is that cost, which a couple other people have said in the chat box, right? Cost, financial restraints, and then you take the, a community with disabilities, and it could be even exponential, right? Second thing I see is transportation, right? Knowledge of what is available. Anna, tell me, is that what we talked about earlier? Like, we don't know what I don't know. I don't know anything about rowing, maybe sort of the marketing part.
Not just rowing, just what sports are available outside school.
Oh, so people don't even know. Right. Yep. Water swim competency. Thank you, Sandy. Right. That's where I'm in the DC area. And I can remember actually when I was 18, this was 20 some years ago, when I first started hearing about, right, and really talking about not only for life skills to be able to join swim teams, but how are we making sure that everybody feels safe in the water, right? Not only you can participate in sports, so that if you use summertime swim pools, right, that it's a real thing. All right. So family obligations. Some of the girls we talk with have to take care of younger siblings. Absolutely, Christy, right? And that's everywhere, right? And some of us know this depending on what type of program we work with and what age and where it is. Some of us see this regularly and we go, wow, this has been for 20 years, right? These issues really haven't gone away. They just keep presenting themselves and we do our best to figure it out. But the ones that you all mentioned, right? Transportation costs, family obligations. We have economic barriers. We have access to facilities. It might be a coaching thing, right? We only have limited access because we can only accommodate, I don't know how many kids you all have in your programs, but maybe you'd like to double that amount, but you can't because you don't have enough coaches. Or maybe the coaching that's necessary to attract and retain isn't where it needs to be. And then sometimes we kind of maybe don't pay attention to this one as much. Maybe athletes don't feel safe or feel a real sense of belonging. And some of that could be tied to the things that you said, right? Maybe I don't feel a sense of belonging because I'm the only one who has to miss 2 days a week because I have to take care of my siblings. Or I don't feel safe and feel like I'm included because, everybody came in, everybody's been swimming since they were 4 and I started swimming at 12, right? Lack of coaches and counselors is a huge issue. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, Michael, before I go on?
Sure thing. We just struggle to be able to provide, kind of consistent opportunities for the kids to find coaches that understand, maybe been around rowing before and that can help, get more kids on the water more days of the week. And we use counselors to help with the carrying of the boats because we work with middle school kids. So not only the boats, but the launches and the motors and all that. So it's a big issue for us.
So I'm going to use that example, Michael, to launch us into this next series. We're going to sort of have 2 scenarios that we're going to unpack about barriers, but I'm going to use that one first. And what we're going to do, so Michael said, is I want us to identify the barrier. Some might seem obvious, right? It's finance. But I'm going to ask you to say, right, is it number? Is it quality of coaches? So what's the barrier in what Michael just described? What are 1 or 2 strategies that everybody on here, right? The wisdom is in this group, can come up with to begin to break down the barriers. And the last one, and this one might have us think out the box, what changes can be made to ensure that more kids have access regardless of this issue? So I'm going to come off for a second. Okay. So Michael's talking about that. So somebody name the barrier. Now someone else is saying, is it just lack of coaches? Is it lack of quality coaches? Is it, I see you nodding your head, Jenny. You want to talk to me?
Oh, well, I'm not doing direct service right now. I work at US Rowing, but I would say it's kind of all of the above. I would say it's lack of coaches, lack of qualified coaches, lack of coaches who kind of look like and represent youth that are kind of from underrepresented backgrounds. So there's a lot to do on the coaching front.
Yeah. Okay. So in my own work, I work on 4 questions. What matters? What does it look like? What makes it hard? What are the tools and strategies we need to address the challenges, right? So now we know that something makes it hard for us to get quality coaches, right? But just because it's hard, we don't toss it out, which is why you all are here doing your summit learning stuff. So 50 people on this call. What are some tools and strategies? Has anyone tackled this well? Has anyone brainstormed with somebody? What are some of the things that you've tried, or what are some of the things we could try? And I do this exercise a lot with high school sort of ADs and coaches when we talk about the lack of coaching and what it looks like. The first thing I want to applaud is I didn't hear anybody say, well, we just plug them in, right? Doesn't matter what qualifications they have. We have 80 kids, therefore we have to have blank coaches, and doesn't matter if they know what they're doing and how good they are, if they're quality, if they're representative, we plug them in. I didn't hear anybody say that. Doesn't mean you didn't do it, but I didn't hear anybody say that. So what are some strategies? Okay, so I hear a challenge, Haley, is that you can't compensate coaches appropriately, and often practice times don't work with someone's work schedule. Okay, lack of quality coaches. I just dealt with this, or at least I'm trying. Should I unmute? Yes, Kathleen, you should. Thank you for asking.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
So I could not find qualified coaches, and I'm in an urban area in the city of Orlando, and I was blown away that I could not find rowing coaches with the history here. And so I went out and recruited a professional trainer that works at UCF, and I'm like, hey, do you want to coach with me at the high school? And so I'm having him go through training with US Rowing, and he's Safe Sport certified, and he represents the high school better than I do. And he's been a great addition to the team. So that's how I've dealt with it, is like going outside of rowing for another like athletic trainer and professional. That it's amazing because he brings different energy.
Boom. Okay, we're done with this work webinar now, right? That's the mic drop moment. That's what it's all about, right? And thinking of that. And I saw Jenny down there going, so smart, right? That's why you use the wisdom in a group, right? When I work with high schools, right, or ADs, and they're like, we don't have coaches. I'm like, we don't have people that know our culture, right? We're not represented. I go, look at all the people you have in school. Maybe you tap somebody like Kathleen, right? But they're like, but Pam, I don't know soccer. No, but you know kids, you know culture, you know education. I can teach you this thing that you need to learn, right? So that's just brilliant, Kathleen, right? So how can we think about that? What are the myriad of, who are the people? I mean, that might be a way to ask it, right? Who are the people that we want in front of our rowers, in front of our youth? And how do we tap them? And then the skills part, as Kathleen said, we can do. Okay. Someone else said, Pamela, would you share yours? I love yours too. Plus your name, Pamela. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Pamela Besteman. The lack of a coaching launch. When I say appropriate one, because we coach on a bay, I need one that can actually, if there's an issue on the water, I can get kids into the launch. I simply don't have one. And so right now we're having to just be on the water or on the land and do as much teaching that way as we can until we have access to one.
And then Pamela, you added another thing down here, which is, I apologize for not being more specific. I didn't see two. I saw the boat launch, but I saw this one. That you said you offer your coaches flexible schedules. We're a small club and they decide when they can coach. Again, what great it might not work for everybody. What great outside the box thinking for expansion. Can you talk about that a little bit, Pamela?
Again, because we're a small club, I can do that. But part of that comes from my experience through the years of coaching, that I'm seeing coaches, especially women, leave the sport because they feel like they are coaching too much. They are burnt out. They, maybe feel like a lot of them are not getting paid their value, especially in our area. For some reason, no one wants to pay coaches well. So that is a flip I am trying to do. Let's see if we can support our coaches well. If we can support them well, we're going to provide our athletes what they need.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. You guys are crushing it here on this one. Cassandra, I saw you come up from mute.
I did. I'm not ready to speak yet. I'm just
okay. All right. You tell me when you're ready. Even if I'm speaking,
everybody's speaking my jam right now. I love hearing this.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, Cassandra, just don't even say excuse me. Just start speaking, and I'll just stop talking on the thing. Okay. Yes, the coaching burnout is so real because they end up taking on too much to make the excess happen. Right. And whether it makes you feel good or not. And Aaron can speak to this because we're in the overall sports industry, not just rowing, right? Those are universal issues, right? Which is
Here, I do
unfortunate,
want
whether
to
it's
add something when it comes to this. First of all, I like thinking outside the box about finding a person who just enjoys working with youth and is qualified, and then they are able to teach. I'm actually moving to Maryland. I'm in Philadelphia, and I have an organization where um, athletes started coming to me because they were getting injured and they just wanted to understand the skill set. And so now I create this fall and winter program for community around Philadelphia of all different high schools who may not have the access either their high school doesn't provide, but I've kind of brought this community of kids to my establishment, and it is quality coaching and teaching because my goal is to send them off and give that back to their athletes. The barrier I come across is, again, I was a young coach, but young coaches or coaches get in their own way of saying, no, it's my way or the highway. I don't want anybody else being coached by anybody. And I've had multiple teachers over my course of my lifetime. And I'm just trying to say, I'm not a threat to anybody. I just want to help your athlete, help your program. And so trying to get that barrier done. But I really believe if you're looking for more quality, there are humans out there that can help smaller groups to then help the bigger group.
Well, first of all, Cassandra, what part of Maryland are you moving to?
Annapolis. My husband just started coaching at the Naval Academy.
Oh, very familiar, but we won't take everybody's time to talk about Annapolis, but beautiful if everybody ever comes wherever you are. So I think what I heard was a barrier inside a barrier. So tell me if I was right? So we're talking about the barrier of quality coaches, and you're saying a barrier besides access is I might have this quality coach, but if we had a culture, if we have a series of expectations, if we have this thing that I'm trying to lead them to, which is what I believe is a quality coach, you get pushback. Right? Yeah. Or maybe there'll be like, I don't need somebody to tell me what to do, so I'm out. Am I overstepping here?
Well, and now I've found common ground because at the end I say, listen, if your coach doesn't want to have you here, then you have to make that decision, right? But if your coach is open to you coming and learning and having a different voice to help you to bring back to your program, then we're moving forward. And that's all it is. I always referred like I'm the piano teacher. You come and have your lesson and then you go off and do your thing. And that's kind of where it is. So
I'm with you now. Okay.
Yeah. I would only, in my world of worlds, I only wish all these young coaches would come to the facility and we can have a talk and we could talk shop and I can have clinics and we can all get on the same pages. That's my dream and my next life.
Well, Cassandra, everybody here is saying, let's make your dream come true, because that was going to be my other question. And let me just preface here a minute. So Dee Dee says, wouldn't it be great? And because we can, right? Because this is the beauty. This is an open-ended summit, right? We're talking about expansion, but all these things matter, right? Wouldn't it be great if coaches had enough self-confidence that when someone works with their athlete, that you could just celebrate the improvement, then add what worked to make that change to your own toolbox, right? Marion, you say, and okay, so there's the one thing. Well, first of all, I want us to know there's a lot of ego in coaching, right? There's a lot of ego in coaching. It doesn't matter what the sport is. And sometimes that ego serves us and sometimes it doesn't. If all I'm seeing is me, it probably doesn't do it right. So put that there for a second. You ask the athletes, okay, if your person says it's all right, have you thought about, but you kind of said it at the end, because that's what I was going to throw out there. What if you invited, and it's like in anything, what if you go, these two coaches would never come, so what? What if you put it out there? I'm here to help you. I mean, you could do it where you're phrasing it right. I'm here to supplement what you already do so brilliantly. I would love you to come learn. What's that?
Just gave me an idea because I have 5 weeks left in Philly and I'm in my final fall teaching. And I think I'm going to bring that up to them on Monday of next week and say, I ask you to invite your coach to come to a session and watch.
There you go. And I would even and put in, give them some specific language, The helpful language, they put it in their own terms, right? But it's about, this is she doesn't want to, some kids are probably going, she don't want to take over your job, but she's good. She knows this, and this, right? Whatever it is, but that you kind of say, this is what I have to offer, and see if you can bring them in the door. Anyone have anything else for Cassandra besides that you want to know when she's doing it and you want to hear how it went? Right? All right. So let's do one more before we give you the tools. So we talked about, there's two. There was transportation and financial, okay? And those two barriers. Has anyone had that on their table, right? Outside of the, if it's, let's say the financial one. Some might say that's easy, right? Well, we fundraise and we allocate money. What else have you tried for a financial barrier? And I want you to think about for a second something beyond just, well, we have more a pot of money, we can give that money to somebody. Is there any outside of the box thinking, like the person, I think it was Pamela, who said, well, we actually let the coaches choose when they practice, right? Is there any other type of model? When I was talking to our lead trainer the other day to prep for this, she said something. I said, this reminds me of an activity I do with people I work with, which is like, if your organization didn't exist the way it did now, this is when we practice, and this is how we go, and this is how we recruit, and this is what it looks like, and you knew, and you had this barrier right now, and you were just starting your organization for the first time, is there any kind of shift you would make? And I'll put this out here for both. Is there any kind of shift you could imagine that would accommodate the financial or transportation barrier? Yeah.
Well, my father was a longtime coach, basketball coach and teacher in phys ed, and I followed in his footsteps. I mean, obviously, teachers and coaches, we do this because we love it. We obviously are not making a killing financially. But he definitely did tell me, when you give a little, you get a little bit back. And my company is not nonprofit, it is for profit. So when the athlete wanted to come and the financial they couldn't afford, I figured out some sort of way. I wanted them to have some skin in the game. Whether it was to clean the bathrooms at the barn or sweep the floors or do something. They had to have some kind of skin in the game, knowing that they really did care. If I'm going to scholarship them because I believe that they're going to benefit from this, I wanted them to have some skin in the game. And then at some point, whether it was that same family or another family, that financial mean came back around to support the organization that I run and go from there. So that's kind of been my path since the beginning.
Thank you, Cassandra. Anyone else?
I can speak to this. This is Jillian again.
Thank you, Jillian.
I have to stay on off camera for a bit, but so I row with an adaptive team in Washington, D.C. I'm a low vision athlete, and we have cross disability on our team, and one of the challenges I had was the boathouse isn't metro accessible. And so kind of one of the questions our program asked in the beginning of the year, are there any athletes that need carpool assistance? And so that's kind of an alleviation of both the transit issue and then also like I'm not having to pay, X amount of money per week on an Uber or cab to get myself to the boathouse. And so that's worked really well for our program.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm seeing here, and then Dee Dee put in, went to public bus transportation to ask to extend route. Oh, and then they cut the route. That's not what I wanted to see. So asked if they had redundant equipment and was able to get an AC transit bus for 108 and got by Class B license. That's what I'm talking about, right? Like, look at that. This is brainstorming. This is thinking outside of the box, right? They didn't want to increase the route, but instead they sold me a bus and I got the license. Volunteering for Learn to Row classes and participate in fundraising activities to cover their costs. And process of establishing an ongoing scholarship fund. Drivers are filling the gaps. Yeah. So, yes, Flo.
Something that you just said made me think of something differently. I put in there transportation. And hi, Liz, and somebody else. Oh, Christy. I actually started at Row LA in Los Angeles. And even then I would say transportation. And I put in the chat transportation. Then I thought about it. You know what? We have a grant for $10,000 sitting in a company that will provide transportation for athletes from South Dallas to the boathouse. So now I need to look at it differently and like, what do we need to focus on? Because now we have the money, we have the teams, but we're still not getting the athletes to the boathouse.
So tell us more, Flo. So why do you think, is it because you never thought about it to this minute? Like have the money or you haven't executed? What's
It made me think that we need to do something differently as far as like educating them, giving them, I don't know, maybe the parents.
Like, am I hearing you say they might not even know that that's available? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, they know it's available. We've said, here I forgot the name of it, and I should probably, when I think about it, I'll put it in the chat because it's a nationwide company. It's like an Uber for youth.
Okay.
Hop, skip, drive. That's what it's called. And so they'll pick the kids up. So we have this partnership with a couple of schools in South Dallas to bring them. And there are some students that come from that school, but I'm thinking about the people that may not have transportation. We have this money sitting there where they can come after school and then get taken to the boathouse and back to school. But we haven't had a lot of athletes take advantage of that.
So your next step might be the survey inquiry as to why, right? The research and the why question, and then the education component to get it done. Fantastic, Flo. Look at you all, just giving ideas left and right to your friends. And then she came off and she smiled and she said hi to two people. You can't end your day better than that. All right. Before I hand it over to Erin to close, again, just remember, this is just the beginning, like probably your fundraising conversation that people didn't want to get off of. Beginning to think about this stuff. And for some people, we've already come up with strategies, we share things, right? But when we're talking about expanding access, and what are some of those barriers, excuse me, some of the tools, especially to support families or in the way Flo's talking about, right? Know that every family, right, to the back of our brain, is going to have a different situation. And that can be just this thing to bring to our forefront of the way we speak or have our coaches talk, all of a sudden, I'm going to use your name, Chance, because it's right in my thing, right? If I'm the coach and I'm like, I can't believe Chance isn't at practice again. I can't believe Chance was unable to get here today, right? And I really don't have a clue about why Chance didn't, or maybe it's because of that transportation issue, right? Let's kind of show some empathy that your situation might not be their situation, or how we can really make sure that our coaches are equipped with that. If you don't have one, use a team communication platform, whether that's Team Snap or whatever you have on your parts of the country, right? A lot of times, as somebody wrote at the very beginning of this session, I don't know what I don't know, like the unknown unknown, right? Sometimes people are like, I just didn't know, right? Again, someone talked about having half an internet for half an hour at the beginning. I forget. That might have been the fundraising call I stepped in on, but again, we take for granted. Well, of course, the schedules are posted here, and this is posted here, and this is posted here. But see what you can come up with. If you want to attract and retain, especially for bridging the opportunity gap, how can you, Erin alluded to this at the beginning, right, about trusting relationships and making those connections, about community. How can you do that a little bit more? And the last part is, again, share tools, the tools that we have. And Erin's going to show you this last little part just for some exposure and some resources. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to turn it over to my partner who will bring us to a close. I didn't even say you owe me a quarter, Erin, because it's been so long since anyone has done that.
I owe everyone a quarter for talking on mute. So before I do, I wanted to just open it up. I think we have just a little bit of time here for Q&A, and I didn't know if you had questions for us at PCA or for Will or anyone else, but wanted to open up the floor here for any questions. That seems like a good sign.
Either that or we're the last session of the day, Erin, one of the two, right?
Okay, so follow-up resources from PCA. When you sign in, you see all these nice things on your screen. but you don't have to do anything right now other than the sign in that I put up at the beginning. I'm going to put it up again here. When you sign in, we'll never share your personal information with anyone, but we will send you a series of emails over the next 6 weeks that include these resources and others. And as much as we're fans of positive coaching and increasing participation and creating a healthy culture, which obviously is something you all are doing a great job of. Alliance is the most important word in our name, and we value the partnership and want to be able to stay in touch with you via our email. So please sign in for today's workshop. I want to comment back to, I just want to maybe spotlight Anna's comment, knowledge of what's available. It's not just that there's a youth program available where they can go row, and that's valuable. But it's also, hey, we've got people that go to webinars just to brainstorm about how we can make this more accessible and a better experience for you kids. What they don't know includes the fact that working hard can be fun. What they don't know is that there are adults that want to facilitate a positive experience for them, in this case, through the vehicle of rowing, but really creating an environment that empowers them and supports them. They may not know that there's money available to help with transportation, and they may not know that they're going to be as safe on the water as they're going to be on land. It's about getting them to feel it. And so, things always come back to communication. How do we communicate to kids in a high school everything that we're working hard on the back end to facilitate for them? So I just encourage you to continue filling each other's emotional fuel tanks, getting the kids to talk more about the opportunities that are out there, and just being proactive like we're doing to take these opportunities to as many young people as possible, because it really is in some people's lives, it's a huge difference maker. I hope they're getting unconditional love at home. I hope they're getting support outside of what they can get from this. But for some, it's whether they're in a healthy environment at home or not, it's a difference-making experience in their lives. Okay, so a couple other notes here. If you want to give feedback to us on the PCA part of today's programming, then I want to give you a Google form. You can use that QR code that's on screen to do it. It's just about a 60-second form, but there's also a Google Doc link in the chat that I just dropped that will take you to the same place. Other than that, I want to say thank you. I want to see if anybody else has closing thoughts. If you didn't already sign in, please do that with that My PCA link. And please know that your work is making a huge difference in the community. You know what? I'm going to take this opportunity to share one thing that I learned in graduate school a long time ago, but it's specific to rowing. And I always found it fascinating. They did a study, and there was a star rower who was not of huge size, and they were really trying to figure out why he was so effective. And they studied why he moved the boat forward more than others. And it came down to when his paddle went in the water, he got maximum resistance quicker and he kept it longer. So most people get maximum resistance for, I don't know, 60% of the time their paddle's in the water. He was getting it for 90 or 95. And when I thought about how did he do that, it really came down to the fact that he was curious about how to win, right? He wanted to win. But the other thing is that he was willing to experience more pain per stroke than most people. And other people would not know until they, learned that he was a star and that his boats kept winning. They wouldn't know that he was scheduling for himself this increased pain every time he put the paddle in the water. And I just wanted to share that with you because that willingness to embrace that challenge and just do what it takes to be effective on the water or off, what a valuable skill that he developed, and we have the opportunity to promote that toughness in everybody we work with. So good luck to you and good luck to all of you. Any other closing comments from anyone?
Will?
No, I just wanted to thank you both so much for your time. If there are no other questions, then we will get started with our summit wrap up.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, everybody.
Thank Pam. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, PCA, as always. And finally, thank you, all of you who are on the call, who have been with us the last 2 days. I really appreciate all of your time and your energy and your thoughtfulness, and all the work that you do across the country. I did want to, if anyone, I know we've been on for like 8 hours over the last 2 days, and I'm feeling it. I'm sure everyone is feeling it. But I did want to open it up. If anyone had like anything they wanted to share with the group or just express as far as something that they thought was really interesting or inspiring, now would be now is the time to do that. We do have like a minute or two for that. If anyone wanted to share something that they took away from Summit this year.
I'll jump in and just say I thought the variety was outstanding this year, and I think this is the best U.S. rowing online conference or even in person that I've attended. I got something out of every single session, so thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Love to hear that, Sandy. Appreciate it. Um, cool. Anybody else?
Well, I've brought this up in the past, but maybe people can opt in or opt out. But I think it would be great if we were to be able to share everyone's emails and phone numbers and maybe program name so we can reach out to each other, whether it be tomorrow or 6 months from now or a year from now. Because I'm sure, not everyone had a chance to look each other up or, chat with each other, but I think that'd be pretty powerful because that's where the strength of what we're trying to accomplish comes from.
Yeah, cool. Let me take that back to the group and see how we make that happen. Um, oh, nice. Yeah, thanks, Jess. Finally, we do have a post-event survey. I would really appreciate if all of you could just spend 30 seconds and fill it out. You're able to rate the different the different sessions that we had and everything, and provide some of your individual feedback. So, would really appreciate if you could click on that link. Just put it in the chat. I'll put it at the top of the chat. So if you can click on that, that would be much appreciated. We would love to hear from you. And yeah, and finally, again, thank you all. I really hope that this was an inspiring summit for you. I hope that it was a useful and interesting one. It certainly was for me. I got the opportunity to, hear about what the plans were for each session before it happened, and it was like much better than I could have even expected on for just seeing it live. So thank you for all of the work that you're doing and your participation over the last 2 days. It's been 8 hours of content and pretty dense stuff at points, and I think hopefully it really bleeds into the work that we're all doing in our own individual programs. So. Yeah, thank you all. And is there going to be more United We Row merchandise to buy? Absolutely. Yes, there will be more United We Row merchandise to buy at the different events that US Rowing is at. So, yes. Cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.